Good morning. It is Friday, March 27th, 2015, Week of the Warriors, Day 5. Week of the Warriors is a week-long event conducted during our Buffalo State spring break to bring awareness to domestic violence. We are here with Joan, the fifth DJ, to do this 24-hour marathon. She is interviewing Michael Weiner of the United Way of Buffalo in Erie County.
Let's get to the reason why we're all here this week, which is discussing domestic violence. I know you've got some statistics here. I'm really curious to see what they are. How would you define domestic violence, in your opinion?
Well, actually, I knew that question was going to be asked, and rather than give you my definition, I think the definition that appears in all the research and all the literature that is summarized around the issue, I think it's a great definition. And the way it basically reads is it's the willful intimidation, physical assault, battery, sexual assault, or other abusive behavior as part of a systemic pattern of power and control perpetuated by one intimate partner against another. To me, that says it all. As a result, there are a number of statistical indicators that represent that this is a very critical and very challenging issue. So, for example, in the last 10 years, domestic violence has accounted for over 21% of violent crime across the country. 3 women a day are actually murdered by husbands or boyfriends in the United States. Women between the ages of 18 and 24, which is college age primarily, are most commonly abused in the form of rape or sexual assault by an intimate partner. 1 in 5 women are sexually assaulted while enrolled in college. We know that a majority, over 76% of females, are victims of domestic violence. And the list goes on. I mean, adolescent girls, 1 in 3, are victims of physical, emotional, or verbal abuse from a dating partner. And we know that nearly 1 in 10 high school age girls are victims of physical, emotional, or verbal abuse by a dating partner. Kids very young in age can be slapped, physically hurt by a boyfriend, and that research has been shown to be consistent over the last several years. And one of the other things that we don't talk about a lot when we talk about domestic violence is the impact that it has not only on the victim but on children or other family members in that environment as well. So there's a lot of research about what that exposure to domestic violence means to a young child. And so 2 out of 3 children are exposed to trauma and violence associated with domestic violence, and it has implications.
Now, these are some rather grim, if I can be frank, statistics. This is sort of a convoluted or, hard to really answer in one sort of short answer there. But what can people do to help either prevent this sort of thing from happening or assist those who have been victimized?
I think that's a great question. Before we answer that question, I just want to give you a couple of other trends that I think are significant to domestic violence. For example, the healthcare implications are substantial. Women that are victimized by abuse are more likely to be diagnosed with some very significant health-related challenges, whether it's increased depression, whether it's suicidal behaviors, increased in substance abuse. You have higher rates of heart disease and high blood pressure. These are very significant concerns. And the same holds true for children that are witness of abusive situations as a result of domestic violence. What happens is children are negatively impacted, and they end up experiencing some at-risk long-term physical, emotional challenges as well. It could be post-traumatic stress. It could be bedwetting. Whatever it is, it's very unhealthy. We also know that parents, are not necessarily attuned to or aware of emerging violence that involves their children. And I'll give you a couple of examples. From the research that I looked at, 66% of daughters that were surveyed said they did not have a conversation about dating violence with a parent over the past year. In addition, 58% of parents that were surveyed could not correctly identify the warning signs of abuse. This is very disconcerting. And we also know, and speaking and thinking about college campuses, stalking is a very serious and significant problem. For example, 42% of stalkers were ex-boyfriends of a victim. 83% of stalking incidents did not go reported to police or public safety officers. This is a significant concern as well. And then finally, one of the emerging issues that we now see as a result of technology, it's a quick and easy way for stalkers to monitor and to harass their victims, cyber stalking. And so these are the kinds of trends that we see that are very disconcerting. Now, interestingly, while I paint this very sort of horrific picture of domestic violence prevalence, the research says that there's actually a fairly significant decrease nationally in the rate of violence against victims in domestic violence environments. And I think that that's pretty fascinating. And I think that speaks to one of the questions you raised earlier, which is what's happening nationally and in our communities to better address the prevalence and to provide earlier intervention and prevention services. And so some of the things that I'll talk about that I think are promising strategies just need to be continually expanded so that there continues to be a reduction in the experience that women and men will have to family violence. So, for example, teaching our next generation that violence is wrong, very critical, and it needs to start at a very young age. And while there are programs that are doing this now in schools, starting at elementary age levels, it's not enough, and it needs to continue to be expanded. Training more of our healthcare providers so that they can assess patients who come through emergency rooms or through primary care settings that abuse is occurring, and talking about that and deciding on a plan is also very critical. And we need to continue to train healthcare professionals in that regard. Implementing workplace prevention and victim support programs. You hear a lot more about violence in the workplace. We need to make sure that our staff in work situations are sufficiently alert, sensitized, and trained in how to intervene and how to prevent these kinds of violence towards women and men. Making services more available to victims, very critical, and we'll talk about that when we talk about some of the things the United Way is doing, and particularly for special population groups. Could be refugees and immigrants in our community where you have a large influx of refugees coming to live in Western New York. It could be around children who are witness to violence and paying more attention to the impact that this experience has on the life of a child. Very important. And then the last thing that I would comment on is that there has been some research that demonstrates that one-stop family violence programs where all services can be provided at one visit is very critical to helping particularly individuals that are traumatized by violence to navigate a complex system of care in the easiest way possible. So leading to your question about, well, how is the United Way helping communities like Buffalo and Erie County address this concern? We support a program called the Family Justice Center. It is a one-stop family violence program so that if I'm a victim of domestic violence, I could go to that program. If I have a child, there's a child care support center there. If I need an order of protection, there are attorneys that can help me acquire that immediately. If I need access to public benefits or I need an immediate placement in a shelter, they can make referral and make sure that I have access to those services. There are counselors and advocates available as well, and there are counselors that will also help address some of the immediate as well as long-term implications for being a victim of domestic violence. This is an example of a program where a person who's already traumatized and leaving a household and a very unhealthy and unsafe situation has access to a myriad of services and supports that would be critical and readily available to that individual in one site. So we think that that's a great opportunity.
It certainly sounds like it. It seems like you're helping the victim cut down on all the red tape and the bureaucracy that they have to go through, which is ultimately calming and assist them in the end. So that's fantastic to know that. quick follow-up question to some of the statistics that you noted. Obviously, this is not a female-only issue. Men experience domestic violence as well. Are there any updated statistics on that?
Yes. Well, we know that men, about 24% of men are victims of domestic violence a year. We create the same package of services and supports for men as we would for women. We want to make sure that there's sufficient diversity in the workforce and the supports that are available, because it could be men and women of color, of different culture. It doesn't matter. And the service sector needs to be sensitive to and able to address the needs of any population group. So when we talk about serving kids, when we talk about serving immigrants, when we talk about serving men that are in unsafe situations, the strategies tend to be very similar. The resources are available, but we know that more likely it's going to be women than it is going to be a man that's going to be subject to violence. Does that mean that we don't want to pay attention to men who are in unsafe situations? Absolutely not. We want to see that they get the same range of services. And by the way, one of the things that we've done in this community that we're very proud of is that we create opportunities for one-stop programs that are not only for women and men of domestic violence, but you probably, one of the other things that United Way does is support children who are witness to violence or may be victims of, for example, sexual assault themselves in an unhealthy household where there's also domestic violence. There's a program called the Child Advocacy Center, also one funded by the United Way. It's operated by the Child and Adolescent Treatment Service Organization, which is a behavioral health program here in Erie County for children up to age 18 and supports their families. This is another program where if a child is traumatized by an assault, they can go and have their health care examined like we would at the Family Justice Center. They have legal advocate available. They have law enforcement available as well. Counseling services are provided. And that's all done under one roof. And so it's an exciting approach, but in this case, its focus is on children. And we know there are other programs like the Veterans One Stop, which is a new program that was just established. Also a one-stop program where a veteran or their family can go for services. It could be they need they have issues of domestic violence. It could be that they need service access to programs that provide workforce development or training or getting back to school. These are the kinds of service organizations that are really becoming very high priority and sort of in vogue because they help citizens access a broad range of services in one location. So very, very critical opportunity.
Absolutely. Now, just a couple more follow-up questions, and then we can continue on with your lovely day. That freezing day, actually. I heard it was pretty cold outside.
Not that bad. We should be used to it by now.
Yeah. One of my follow-up questions is that obviously there was a large stigma of domestic violence. Sort of, I remember being a child, and it was kind of, hush, hush. You don't talk about it. It was just sort of normal. And now it seems that at least we're getting this conversation out in the open more so than we did 25, 30 years ago. Has that helped survivors in the long run? I'm hoping.
Absolutely. Anybody who's in the field of domestic violence will tell you some of the most powerful and influential stakeholders that could help address the issue of domestic violence locally and across the country is to hear from victims. Survivors is how they're referred to. The testimony from a survivor who has repeatedly been victimized, physically hurt, emotionally abused, sexually assaulted, who after a long period of time finally makes a decision to leave an unhealthy, unsafe situation, and to talk about survival and how they've formed a plan of recovery to support their family and to move on in life. There's nothing more powerful than hearing from that survivor. And many of the programs today, as part of their advocacy efforts, that's exactly what they do. They bring together survivors to tell their story. And this is happening more frequently than it's ever happened before. And I think that that's one of the reasons why the trend is for there to be more heightened awareness and visibility to the crime associated with family violence, and to help people express that and to get out of those unsafe situations. Better to be public about it, better to be open about it. But the reality is that survivors always fear they're at great risk by exposing the fact that there is violence in their home. And so the kinds of programs and services that need to continue to be supported and created are the ones that will create the most confidence in the survivor that if they leave an unsafe situation, they're going to still be safe and they're going to learn to thrive over time.
That's fantastic. That's a really great answer. Finally, one more question for you. If there's a nonprofit or just individuals who want to gain help and support, what would they have to do from, what can the United Way do to assist them? What sort of resources are there available?
Well, there are a couple of things that I would recommend. There are a couple of phone numbers that I would suggest. First of all, for the victims, anybody who needs access to a 24-hour hotline because they may be a victim of violence, they should call 862-4357. 4357 actually refers to help. For sheltering, 884-6000 is the number for somebody who needs access to a shelter. And then there's another program, phone number that a lot of people don't know about that has a wealth of information, including how to help connect for volunteer opportunities. It's called 211 West New York. It's a 24/7 phone line. It also has a corresponding website. If you or I dial 211 right now, we would get an operator, a certified operator online who lives in this community, who would be able to answer our questions about how to navigate the system, where to go for services, where to go to connect with a not-for-profit agency for the purposes of providing support. If they called me at 887-2604, I would certainly take a call and help connect a potential volunteer to a not-for-profit agency in this community. And then one of the things that we always like to do is to connect that volunteer with the organization that they have the most interest and passion to work on. So given our discussion has been about family and domestic violence, there are several programs that are funded by the United Way here in Erie County, many of which I mentioned to you, the Family Justice Center, the Child and Adolescent Treatment Center. There's also the International Institute of Buffalo, which provides a domestic violence program for immigrants and refugees. There's Child and Family Services as well. All these agencies are, you could Google them and you could find out all about their organizations. You can contact 211, or you can give me a call and I'll be happy to provide that information as well.
Thank you. So before we wrap up, are there any final thoughts you'd like to contribute about either Week of the Warriors or about this topic in general?
I just think it's great that Buffalo State College has taken the initiative to elevate the conversation community about the prevalence of domestic violence in this community and nationally. What are some of the strategies that are helping to address this concern? What are some of the resources available to people out there listening to us today so that they could make a connection and maybe make that first attempt to get out of an unhealthy, unsafe situation? Statistically, my understanding is that victims on average wait until 7 serious offenses before they leave an unhealthy, unsafe situation. And so if we can get people to remove themselves and to get safe by accelerating that time frame, and it has a good outcome, that's what we would want to promote.
Absolutely. So, Michael, I'd like to thank you, your colleagues, and the organization for all the work you do. It's definitely helping to change a lot of people's lives. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for coming here and talking to us today.
My pleasure.
Okay. That was Michael Weiner from the United Way. This is Joan, and you're listening to WBNY's Week of the Warriors. Again, you are listening to 91.3 FM, WBNY Buffalo. We're Buffalo's original alternative since 1982, brought to you by the Buffalo State College Student Activity Fee. All right, I said that in the mouthful. Got it all one time. I was pretty good. I'm going on, oh my gosh, I think hour 12, 13 so far. So I think I'm hanging in there. What do you think? 13? Okay, so I have another interview for you. Again, for those of you just joining us, Week of the Warriors is to raise awareness about domestic violence and to provide resources for anybody who needs it or people who are curious about it. And with me right now is Rikki Nawotka. Hello, Rikki, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. If I can move my mouth to speak. It's the 13 hours thing is starting to come
Understandably, it's been a long day.
How's your morning been so far?
It's been great. How about you?
Not bad. Just hanging in there, trying to stay awake.
Understandable.
I got to get a little more caffeine in my system.
There you go.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am the Domestic Violence Program Coordinator, and I work for the International Institute of Buffalo, and our department is the Survivor Support Services Department. So we work specifically with any foreign-born, refugee, immigrant, undocumented person who is a survivor of domestic violence. So basically my role is kind of divided into case management, working directly with foreign-born survivors of domestic violence, and doing a lot of work in the criminal justice system, a lot of advocacy in the criminal courts, in the civil courts, in the integrated domestic violence courts. A lot of that is around just basic stuff, providing language access, interpreters, transportation assistance with social services, helping them get into shelters, things like that. And then the other part of my position is based on doing community outreach. So working in the community and doing trainings and outreach in small groups of women on, what is domestic violence, how do we identify it, and then what do we do if we know someone who is a survivor of domestic violence who may want services.
Now, obviously, without getting into too many specifics, how prevalent is domestic violence for immigrants?
I mean, it's huge. We have a growing population of immigrants and refugees on the west side of Buffalo. But, just to give you a little idea, our department has served over 150 survivors of domestic violence in the last 2 years from over 40 different countries of origin.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So let's move on to some of the questions that we have here. Specifically, how would you define domestic violence?
I mean, I would use the typical definition in that it's really just about power control. It's a pattern of intentional and coercive. People are using force and threats, and I think I try to hammer across that it's a pattern when I talk to people, that this is something that's happening over and over. It's manipulative, and the end result is that someone is trying to get abusers, trying to get power and control over that person.
So it seems like a lot of it is just not just physical, but also mental. There's that sense of control and that sense of I am the dominant person and you will not obey maybe so much, but just this is the power that I have over you. Is that about right? Or
yeah, of course. And we use this, I'm sure you've heard in your week of the power control wheel, but we use a slightly different one that's geared towards immigrant survivors of domestic violence. So the ways that abusers try to get power and control is a little bit different in immigrant communities. So we see things like using children, but not using children in the traditional sense, but maybe threatening to take the children from the country. I'm going to take them back to Yemen, or I'm going to take them back to our country of origin. We see a little bit of difference in the tactics that abusers use, especially around the financial abuse, like abusing benefit cards, the social services benefit cards, and saying, well, I'm the person on this benefit card, I'm listed, therefore I get to use these food stamps and you don't get to use any of them. So those are some twists we see on the tactics.
That actually, some of that answers my second follow-up question, which is what are some of the special considerations or situations that are unique to immigrants who have to deal with this problem?
Yeah. I would say the language barrier is absolutely number one, especially when the criminal justice system is involved or when they call 911. There's not always language access that's utilized, and that's a huge barrier. If you have the abuser who knows English, of course, and they're the one speaking to the police officer, or their friend is the one who comes in and maybe isn't interpreting correctly, or it's just a community member off the street, it's not always an accurate interpretation, and the survivor isn't always, her point isn't always illustrated at all, if not accurately.
So it seems like a lot more advocacy, especially when it comes to the language barrier and some of the unique problems that raises when it comes to this sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's certainly why I have a job, and I wish I did it, and that, there wouldn't need to be extra advocacy for immigrant and refugee survivors, but, unfortunately there does have to be. Unfortunately.
Well, it's good that people like you are able to be here to offer that assistance. It is definitely useful.
Thank you.
And this will lead to my next question. What inspired you to take a job working in the legal field of domestic violence? Like, what got you into this?
Well, I was an undergrad in social work, and I was placed at the International Institute of Buffalo, and I just kind of fell in love with the atmosphere and the mission of the agency, and the clients. Certainly, that we're just working with refugees and immigrants is such a fascinating field, and I learn something new every day about a different culture, and you're so immersed in cultures that it's just been something I've become so passionate about. And then I kind of through looking at all the departments and working with all departments at the International Institute, I ended up moving upstairs, transferring upstairs to a different department and working with human trafficking and domestic violence.
Oh my gosh, so a little bit of everything you were involved with.
Yes, I would say so, yeah.
Yes. Now, I understand that you had previous experience as a coalition member of the Erie County Coalition Against Family Violence. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Could you tell us a little about that?
Sure. Yeah. Over the past few years, I've kind of been back and forth with the International Institute between going to grad school and coming back. But I did spend a good couple of years as a member of the Erie County Coalition Against Family Violence, and I did. My work primarily was I was a general member, but I would assist with the advocacy days. So every year, the New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence sponsors a bill, and we would advocate with local legislators, and then we would go to Albany. We haven't done that in the last few years, but to try to advocate for the bill to be passed. So that was a lot of my work, doing more kind of macro level social work and doing more advocacy on bills. It was the Fair Access to Family Court Act a few years ago that was passed. And so every year we pick a new bill and we kind of comb through it and make sure we know everything about it and then lobby for that to be passed.
That was actually my follow-up questions of whether or not you do lobbying rather. So that's excellent. It's good to hear. Now, this is obviously, the legal advice you'd have to give would be tailored to the specific individual or circumstances.
Yes.
But in your experience, what is some general crucial information related to like the different legal fields that a victim should know about, again, generally speaking? Yeah.
I think, for my field with immigrant and refugee survivors is that, there is interpretation available in the court system, and just that there are options, there are advocates, there are, specialized attorneys who really work specially with domestic violence. We have partners with a lot of attorneys through Assigned Counsel and through a lot of attorneys through nonprofits in Buffalo that really understand the dynamics of domestic violence and really can be an extra kind of advocate in addition to having an advocate in the court system. So we kind of have a small team that we kind of almost establish with a survivor. And I think that really helps them to know that they do have people behind them that are pushing and advocate for what they want to see happen in the criminal justice system. And a lot of times I think people feel alone, and it's a new system to them. It's very foreign, especially to immigrant and refugee survivors. So having that, knowing that there are options and they do have this team and they do have people who can assist them.
Yeah. Aside from the obvious difficulties of coming to a new country, going through the immigration process, trying to establish yourself as a new citizen, then you have unfortunate circumstances like this to deal with. It can be extremely overwhelming. So I think having that advocacy is definitely helpful in a situation.
Yeah.
Some of this you answered with the last question, but is there any advice that you can give anyone currently going through this? Like, what are some resources that people can go through? Are there any numbers or websites that people can check out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our local domestic violence shelter, I couldn't say enough good things about Haven House, and that number is 884-6000. And again, they have language access available, and certainly for people who do speak English as well. And then the National Domestic Violence Hotline is the number I always give, and that's 1-800-799-SAFE or 7233. And that also has advocates available in over 180 languages. So if you don't speak English and you call into that line, they can provide you with an interpreter through language line over the telephone.
That is fantastic. Thank you for those resources. I'm going to post them up on WBNY's Facebook page and Twitter if you don't mind.
No, that's fine. Great.
That's really it as far as specific questions I have. Is there anything that you would like to add that I didn't cover, or anything that you think would be pertinent to the listeners?
I think that's it. I think we covered it.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that was Rikki Nawotka. Thank you. Thank you for coming in and talking to us. We really appreciate it. And like I said, if you're listening in, I will post that information up on our Facebook. So go check us out on Facebook at 91.3 WBNY Buffalo's Original Alternative. Hello, welcome. This is Joan, and we're in our, I think, 14 now of WBNY's Week of the Warriors and my 24-hour shift. It's actually flying by. I'm having a really good time playing some cool music and talking to some fantastic people. And what a nice little segue that is. I have another fantastic person with me right now. With me today is Aaron Maracle. Hello, Aaron. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. And yourself?
Not too bad.
Other than the 14 hours?
Just trying to stay awake at this point. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I am the assistant director at SBI Health Education up at the University at Buffalo. So it's nice to be over at other SUNY campus here in Buffalo, over here at Buff State. And I am working with Walk a Mile in Her Shoes this year, among other things.
Okay. Now, I'm not too familiar with Walk a Mile in Her Shoes, and could you explain to me and to the audience what that is about?
Absolutely. Walk a Mile in Her Shoes is the International Men's March against sexual assault, domestic violence, and really gender violence as a whole. It's a great way to get involved for folks if they always want to be involved, or they're looking for something to be involved with, but they quite don't know how. You don't want to go for the bigger things. Showing up to Walk a Mile in Her Shoes is a great, fun way, really, to get involved with issues of gender violence.
Is it similar to, say, a 5K or a 10K, something like that? Or
no, it's hopefully we get to get those kind of numbers. Those are pretty popular events, but it's not quite that competitive. It's not necessarily timed or anything along those lines. We do have folks show up. Last year we've been hitting around over 200 people for the past several years, and we have it's not mandatory to wear the shoes, but we do encourage folks to wear them. And it starts at Crisis Services on Main Street in Hurdle. It goes down to Hurdle and Parkside, and then comes right back. And we have a lot of different activities going on, so it can get competitive, especially we do encourage teams to come by and form their own teams and have large groups of people, so there might be some internal competitiveness between those groups. But it's not anything like a 5K where it's going to be timed and there's big rush for the finish line.
And now, is there a website or any available information if somebody's interested in getting involved with that?
Absolutely. If you go to crisisservices.org, it's right on the homepage, and Walk a Mile should be one of the first things up there, and it has a link on there for more information. You just click that, and it gives you all the information about not only the event itself, but the building a team and the activities and the timetable as well.
Okay. So with your permission, I'd like to post that on the station's Facebook when we're done today, so people can access that if they'd like.
Sure. I'm sure Crisis Services would appreciate the increased traffic from the fine folks here at Buff State.
Excellent. Appreciate that from you. Okay. So I understand there's also a couple of other events that are coming to Niagara and Erie counties. Is that correct?
That's correct. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and those 2 months are pretty busy with these types of events. Walk a Mile is certainly one of the larger ones for us. I know Niagara County will be putting on a similar Walk a Mile in Her Shoes during April. So it's the first one I believe that they've done, so we're very excited to see how they do over there. There is also Rock a Mile in Her Shoes, which is a concert benefit for Crisis Services, and that's going to be taking place down at Mohawk Place. So that's going to be exciting. That's the first year we've ever had anything like that done. So that's going to be very, very exciting. I hope to see everybody there.
Hint, hint.
Yeah. And we also have a couple other events like UB. We are hosting the V-Day campaign and the Vagina Monologues. And for folks who don't know what the V-Day campaign is, it's the international campaign to raise awareness about violence against women and girls. Buffalo had its own performance, and it was done in February, and they have one done annually as well. And UB is the host of the one in April, specifically SBI up at UB.
Now, all of these events that you mentioned, are they strictly annual events, or do they happen quarterly? Or
most of them are annual events. We try to get them as large as possible. So usually annual works out pretty well for that. Walk a Mile in Her Shoes has been going on for I think about 10 years now.
Oh gosh!
It started off as an event just with the UB, and then it slowly began to grow and grow, and then it opened up to the community. So now it's at Crisis Services right there in the Main Street Hurdle community, and it's been growing every year, and we hope that it continues to grow. The Vagina Monologues are an annual thing that happens up with SBI and UB. Rock a Mile, I mean, if it goes well, I certainly hope that it becomes an annual event. We have a great lineup. The bands escape me right now, but we have a great lineup for all those folks, so we're very excited to have that going on as well.
So it sounds like you got like a little bit of everything going on, just different types of advocacy and different ways for people to get involved. There's a lot of different venues to choose from, it sounds like.
Absolutely. And, it's one of those sexual violence and domestic violence have traditionally been seen as issues that, take place in the home, and there's some things that aren't talked about. And one of the biggest ways to start helping to put an end to those types of things is really just getting the people know about them and really beginning to talk about them. And that's really an important piece. You can't help put an end to something if you don't know about it.
Absolutely.
So they're great fun events, and for somebody who doesn't really know about it, it's a great way to be involved. Rock a Mile was started by somebody who attended walk a mile last year. I was just looking for something else to get involved with, and somehow they can help. And, all of a sudden here it is a year later just about, and, the event's organized and ready to go.
That's fantastic. I really hope it does well. So thank you, for ordering it and organizing it, rather. That actually sort of leads to my second follow-up question, which is it seems like the stigma of at least discussing domestic violence is starting to subside. Am I correct in making that assumption? Or
you hope it does, especially, it's been a big issue with the NFL and everybody talking about it. And one of the biggest things, again, is being able to talk about it and showing your support for survivors. And again, survivors didn't feel like they could come forward because it's not an issue that everybody talks about. It's, not something that a lot of people feel comfortable talking about. And with all this media attention, it gets people wondering, what's going on, how prevalent it is. And it's sad that it needs something, like the circumstances around why it's so prevalent, or why we've been talking about it in the NFL. Like a big event has to happen, or abuse has to happen for us to talk about it. But, in terms of, awareness and bringing it to light, it's fortunate that it happened to such a large media presence, so it's something that's really being talked about. So we hope that it's not one of those things where it just happens one year and then it kind of dies off. We hope that it's a continuing conversation, and that it'll lead to, increased awareness and increased services for survivors, not only locally, but nationally as well.
Well, God willing, so certainly a lot of people rely on those resources in order, not even just for their own mental and physical health, but just to survive in general. So
absolutely,
keeping my fingers crossed for that. So I understand also that you worked with the New York State Domestic and Sexual Violence Hotline as a counselor. Is that correct?
I did. I did work on that for just about a year and a half.
Okay. What was it like doing the type of work? I imagine it must be a little emotionally draining at times.
It absolutely is, and it absolutely can be. It's not one of the difficulties that you can find, especially being on the phone, is, we get calls, not locally, but we can get them anywhere from, far, say, like Rockland County or Suffolk County, sort of at the other end of the state, to, more rural counties as well. And we're very fortunate here where crisis services is able to respond pretty readily to all the hospitals here in Erie County for domestic violence and sexual assault. But you get a lot of folks who are looking for help, and they live on one end of the county, and their local crisis center or domestic violence service provider is sort of on the other end, and trying to help find ways to bridge that gap. And it can be difficult just in the fact that you want to help and do more, and just physical limitations and limitations of being on a hotline really don't allow you to do that.
It sounds like, especially when it comes to physical location, there's only so much that somebody can do, which I would hope that at least talking to somebody about it and at least being that advocate in that way would give somebody the push they need to get additional resources and help, or maybe help other people in that same sort of spot.
And in a lot of cases, it really is just, having that service there available, and knowing that somebody is there to be able, even if it's to provide that service and support over the phone. Maybe one of the big things is safety planning with a caller, and, if they're not able to find a way to get away from the abuse, but maybe to find a way to, to be safe, or to minimize the risk of injury in case, the abuse continues, or if they have it available to be able to, say, have a plan in case, they finally do decide. And I think one of the things that people don't really understand is, like, a lot of, they question, like, why don't you just leave? And, when you've been in a relationship that includes domestic violence, folks just don't have the resources to leave. We all think about the physical abuse, the media does a pretty good job of bringing that to light, but it's not always, that cathartic moment where somebody takes off a large pair of sunglasses and they have a black eye and everybody rallies to help them out. Unfortunately, abusers get really good at abusing people, so it's not that, black eye, there's a lot of abuse to the body, but it's not just that physical abuse. It's, years of telling somebody that they're not good enough and that they don't deserve better and that they have nowhere else to go. And, if it's over the course of years, people begin to believe that as well. Or it could be financial abuse. Somebody, you could be working full time, but if you're in that type of relationship, that person might be taking all the money, or they control the checks, or they control, the bank cards and things like that, or, they just, it gets to the point where that person isolates them from their friends and family members. It makes them fearful that he's going to come after them. So you lose those resources. It's not just as easy as it seems like, oh, just go. People, you need a place to go, and you need, this day and age, you need money to be able to do that, or you need a local crisis center to be able to provide those services for you. And, that's one of the reasons why we have things like Walk a Mile. Budgets are getting tighter and tighter, and, folks are always looking for ways to supplement that funding and look for ways to help, folks when they need it. And even when you have grant funding, it doesn't always pay for the things that maybe you want to be able to help people with, so that's why fundraisers like Rock a Mile and Walk a Mile are so important, to be able to provide, that additional funding, those unencumbered funds, to be distributed to folks who really need it. Absolutely.
And it sounds like, obviously you can tell for the most part if somebody's being physically abused, but that emotional and mental degradation that happens to people, it's invisible. And it's definitely hard when you need help and there's no way of describing it because you're so afraid or so worried about what the consequences of that would be.
And those types of things, can be done. People do it in public too. People you would hope would maybe, call the police or step in if they see somebody being abused. But sometimes it doesn't need to be that. It can just be a certain look that the perpetrator gives the survivor, and, then they know, something's coming, and it's just that fear. That intimidation factor is something that people don't really always consider when it comes to domestic violence.
And as a follow-up to that, in a way, working for the domestic and sexual violence hotline as a counselor, in your experience, and obviously you don't have to get into specifics, but what was the most reoccurring kind of phone call that you've received?
A lot of the ones that I experienced are folks making just a reach, that first little bit, just seeking somebody to really talk to about it. Again, we talked a little bit about like the lack of resources, and friends and family are resources, and somebody, it's just them reaching out for somebody. And if you look at domestic violence survivors and you chat with folks, or you just even read some of the literature that's online, that it's not something that happens right away. Being able to get out of that type of relationship, 5, 6, 7, 8 times it takes, to get out of that type of relationship. So, but it all starts with that first one. So a lot of them were people just reaching out to see what was available. And one of the limitations of the line, we really want to try to refer them as best as possible to their local one, because they're the ones who are going to be able to provide that long-term service delivery. So a lot of it was, folks, seeking, where can I go, and a lot of times people don't know. Again, if it's in a larger county or a rural large county, again, you're on one end, they're on the other. They might not know that they have a local resource available, but they're fortunate enough to be able to find, any one of those numbers, whether it's their state hotline, the national hotline numbers, or their county hotline numbers. At least they're able to find that one thing, and we're able to steer them to the place that they can best get help. Absolutely.
Now, I have been giving out the numbers to the 24-hour domestic violence hotline for Erie County, as well as the national 24/7 hotline. Are there any additional resources, be it phone numbers, be it websites, that people can check out if they either want to help somebody or if they themselves are looking for help?
For this, Erie County Crisis Services website is great. It has a lot of information on there. If to be the first one to help people, if people are looking for, somebody mentioned it to me, just knowing those numbers, even if they haven't come to you. Again, for people who are experiencing domestic violence, just having somebody who is there and say, hey, you know what, if you need help, I'm here to be able to help you. And just, again, knowing a number like Crisis Services number, which is 716-834-3131, which is, again, listed on their website, which is going to be posted on your webpage. Thank you very much again.
You're welcome.
It's just, just knowing where to turn for that type of help. It doesn't have to be, again, sweeping them out of the house and protecting from that. Sometimes it's just knowing that if the abuse is getting really bad, I have a safe place to go. Or if I flash my lights twice in the house, can you please call the police? it could be something as simple as that. But if folks are looking to really, help out in sort of a long-term way, crisis services relies very heavily on volunteers. They respond 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. 366 on the leap year as well, to all Erie County hospitals, again, for calls of domestic violence and sexual assault. So if you're looking to be involved really in a long term and really learn those skills on how to help, the Crisis Services Advocate Volunteer Program is a great way. And having worked with Crisis Services and knowing just the value of the volunteers, the great work that they do, they're absolutely invaluable in being able to provide a 24-hour day, 7-day a week, year-round service.
That is an immense investment. So to any Buffalo State or UB, perhaps, students who are listening in, definitely consider that if you're looking for volunteer experience, help some people and do some good in the world. So I guess my final question, at least for the moment, is from your experience and everything that you've dealt with the situation, what can be done to lower the domestic violence rate? What kind of preventative steps can we take, if any?
That's a question, right? And I guess if I had the answer for it, I'd really be working on that as best I could. I think just people having a better understanding of the dynamics of domestic violence and gender violence, the idea that it's, that power and control aspect to it, and just being aware of, the things in this world that really contribute to it. Violence against women and domestic violence isn't anything new. And the things that contribute to it. And, we only have so much time here, so I can't get into, a whole lot of those, but just being aware that, it happens a lot more frequently than people believe, and that, being able to talk about it, is really important. And whether you know somebody or not, having that conversation with, younger folks, as they get younger and younger. That's the nice thing about working at a college for me, is I get to have a conversation with, people like yourself and all the students up at UB in a variety of different ways, whether it's, coming on these or putting on programs like Walk a Mile in Her Shoes or like Take Back the Night and things like that. It's being able to have that conversation. And I think the more people understand that and they understand the dynamics, the better off they are. When you bring this problem into the light and you stop saying it in secret, what happens to the person 2 doors down the street versus, that's what happens to, a friend, a neighbor, a family member. When you start recognizing it, that it's not just, a problem that's out there, it's a real problem that happens to real people, and having that conversation is important, can go a long way in helping to lower the rates and really ultimately hopefully prevent domestic violence.
And having that initial advocacy can really help maybe stem or assist somebody who might be going through the beginning stages or later in this sort of situation, I would assume.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's not one of those things that happens suddenly either. All of a sudden, everything's, just perfect, and then all of a sudden you're in an abusive relationship. It happens over time. So being aware of, some of the warning signs, if you see it in people that is really important. And for folks who are already experiencing that, that advocacy is really important. The response at the hospital is amazing, and at the very least, it's that first point of contact. They might not have the resources now, maybe not in a week, maybe not in a month, maybe not in a year, but they know if they need the help that it's there. And the folks at Crisis Services and their advocates do so much to help out with that. I know the domestic violence funding is a little tricky at a lot of places right now, but even if they can't get that direct help right there from them, they'll definitely be able to link them with a service provider who can definitely help them in one way or another.
Before we conclude the interview, is there anything that you would like to add as a final thought, or anything that I forgot to mention?
I would just like to say, it doesn't, again, being part of the solution to gender violence, which includes domestic violence and sexual assault, it doesn't have to be anything large. You don't have to go and start your own thing like Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. A lot of time it's just being there and showing up. A big part of Walk a Mile in Her Shoes is going out there and showing the community that they have support and that they have allies within the community. So a big part of it is, I know money's tight for everybody. It's a fundraiser, but if you can't manage that, even the $5 for registering, just coming there in person and being there and showing your support. that can be huge. And somebody who might be experiencing it might see you there and just know that that they might have an ally in you, a place to turn. That's really all it takes. It just takes. I'm a social work guy. I'm a social worker, so I really feel that's all it takes. Is just a lot of times it's just that one resource that's available to them. And again, it doesn't have to be anything huge. It could just be coming to one of these great events in either Niagara, Erie County, in October or April, or just again having that conversation with folks. If you have kids or relatives, I know I have conversations all the time with friends and family members about it. I might not be the biggest hit at family parties, but at least I'm getting it out there, and I give them a chance to think about one thing or the other. So
absolutely. So, and it seems like sometimes you just need that one person just to be there and to help you out, even if it's just their presence and going, hey, I'm here for you if you need anything, just to talk or just to be there. And that seems like that can make all the difference.
It certainly can. One person definitely can just make all the difference in the world. And again, there are a lot of great resources in the county, and just knowing that one place for them to turn, and if they didn't know about it and you did, being able to hand them that number or that card, or saying, hey, you know what? If you need, to store a bag in case you need to leave, you can leave it here. Or, what if I see you flash the house lights, I'll call the police to be able to try to keep you safe as best I can.
Yes. Okay, well, that concludes our interview. I'd like to thank you, Aaron, for joining us today. A lot of helpful information there, a lot of helpful experiences, and thank you for everything that you're doing. This was Aaron Maracle from Walk a Mile in Her Shoes. You're listening to 91.3 FM, WBNY. This is Joan, and we're on hour, 15 of my 24-hour shift in WBNY's Week of the Warriors, where we're doing some awareness about domestic violence and giving you some resources and some information to help you or somebody who might find yourself in the unfortunate situation of being in one of those terrible traumas. With me right now, I hope, bearing some technical difficulties, is Erica Olsen. Erica, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Erica. Fantastic. Thank you for your patience. Hi. I am running off very little sleep, so thank you for bearing with us.
No problem. It sounds that way.
Okay. How are you doing today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you.
Great. So please introduce yourselves and yourself, and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So my name is Erica Olsen, and I'm with the National Network to End Domestic Violence. I'm a deputy director of the Safety Net Project. The National Network to End Domestic Violence is a membership organization. We're the members of us are the state domestic violence coalitions, and every state and U.S. territory has a coalition that represents their local programs. And at the national level, we have a whole bunch of projects where we hear the information coming from the states to represent the local programs and the state coalitions, and therefore the voice of survivors in more federal and national work. So we do a lot of training and technical assistance for programs, law enforcement, prosecutors. We do a lot of public policy work. The Safety Net Project specifically that I'm on looks at the intersection of technology with domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking. Mm-hmm. So we do a lot on how technology is misused as a tactic of abuse and what we need to know as service providers when we're working with survivors about technology so that we can help hold offenders accountable and also help survivors to strategically plan for their safety and privacy.
So to clarify, we're talking as far as cyber violations go, something like revealing somebody's personal information or their social security number, things like that?
Absolutely. Those are definitely two types of tactics, is revealing somebody's personal identifying information and the social security numbers, addresses, names, different things like that. But technology is a big umbrella, term is technology safety that we use. It's a very large umbrella term. There are many types of tactics of abuse that fall under that. People misuse technology to spy on other people, to spy on their computer or their cell phone activity, to track their location using GPS devices, and that could be standalone GPS devices or something that is within a laptop or a cell phone. Or a car. So there's a number of things that people do. Sometimes people post very inappropriate information about their partners or their ex-partners. And sometimes that information is true and sometimes it's not. So it could be personal identifying information, or it could be just falsifying information to make it harder for that person to find a job if they're Googled and bad information comes up about them, and it might not be true at all. So we see a number of different tactics that's used regarding technology.
And this is sometimes it can be really terrifying, especially since it's so hard to tell on the internet what's true and what isn't with all these different conflicting sources of information. So I'd imagine you're doing a great service for many people. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So you answered some of this in your answer just now, but just for clarification, how would you further define domestic violence related to technology?
Very further define domestic violence related to technology. I think that specifically, we always want to stress that technology isn't the problem in itself. Technology is a great tool, and many different types of technology are strategically used by survivors in order to stay safe, to increase their privacy, especially when survivors are in the position where they are relocating and trying to start new away from an abusive person. And they're very concerned about their privacy at that point. And so technology can be a wonderful tool. It also connects survivors in so many ways. A lot of abusers isolate survivors so that they are disconnected from their family, their friends, coworkers, things like that, as another type of tactic of abuse. And technology can serve to help reconnect survivors or keep them connected to family and friends, and that essentially that support system when they need it the most. But so we're always very clear to stress that technology in itself is not the problem. How people decide to misuse technology, very consciously misuse technology as a way to control, intimidate, terrify, and abuse somebody else is really the problem. And like I said, there's a big intersection there. But it's really just it's a extension of abuse as we've always known it. You take away the technology and you're going to have an abusive person. So, abusers would monitor or track people, their partners in other ways, in various ways. And they're just, the newer technology may allow people to do that a little easier, a little more cheaply. It gives them additional tools to do it, but it's not necessarily a brand new tactic in itself.
And I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, if that answers the question.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Clarify it.
And I would imagine that more access to things like social media certainly doesn't help that situation any either.
Social media is an interesting component of this work, because social media, obviously, we all hear of the misuses, so it obviously can be misused by people, and it can be really misunderstood. So when somebody is using different social media platforms and they're not really well informed about the different settings and the different options that exist there for how to control their information, then it can be misused even easier, or it can be used against somebody. We've seen certain platforms that have default settings where survivors are sharing information and they're not realizing that their location is being shared with whatever they're posting. And so we also, in our team, we also work closely with several different technology companies to help make sure that survivors' experiences are kept in mind in the development and updating of many different platforms and different tools that are out there. But social media can really be misused. It definitely can, but it's also such an amazing tool for communicating, finding resources, connecting with people, both, like I said before, in terms of breaking that isolation and keeping in contact with family and friends, but also for survivors to connect with other survivors, to connect with programs, to find resources. Many of local programs and state coalitions, national agencies, a lot of them have Facebook pages, Twitter accounts, Instagrams, and I think putting out information about domestic violence can be very informative. So people use it in a number of ways.
And that actually answers my second follow-up question, which was to shift focus to the positive aspects of it. What were some online resources that survivors or people looking to help could take a look at there?
There are a ton of different resources on our website, which is NNEDV for the National Network to End Domestic Violence, NNEDV.org. We have a ton of resources under our Safety Net Project section that specifically deal with technology abuse, but there's lots of other information about the hotline. The National Domestic Violence Hotline website also provides a lot of information. There's Love is Respect has a lot of information as well, specifically for teens and younger adults. There's some chat lines, there's texting hotlines. There's a number of ways that programs have started to really use technology to better communicate with survivors and give a lot more options for survivors to be able to find resources and just general information. I think people are often very confused about what their options are when they are being abused, both in terms of safety and accountability, knowing what's illegal, what's not. We have a great resource as well called Women's Law, and it's a website, womenslaw.org, and survivors can go on to there and basically be able to find out what the laws are in their state. How to get an order of protection, if they have a child in common, all sorts of different things that can apply to them and can be really specifically answered to their questions, can be specifically answered to help them navigate the process.
That is fantastic. Would you mind if I linked to some of those resources on our Facebook and Twitter accounts?
That would be wonderful.
Great. Thank you very much for that. Now, let's shift over a bit because I'm curious as to how you got involved in this line of work. Specifically, why did you choose to pursue a career in the field of domestic violence and advocacy and awareness?
That's an interesting question. I haven't really thought about that in a long time. Mostly because I've been working in domestic violence for it's surprising, but over 15 years now. In total, and I think I went to school to be a social worker. So I went to school in social work school in SUNY Albany, and I think domestic violence really, as a field, really stood out to me because I was one of those social workers who was kind of open to a number of different fields when I started studying social work, and I just really wanted to work with people. There was a number of social issues that I was concerned about and wanted to focus on, and in trying to narrow it down, I did a number of internships, a number of volunteering with different nonprofits and organizations in the area, and repeatedly the common theme among every place that I ever worked was domestic violence. It's really it's extremely pervasive, and it's not talked about enough. It needs to be addressed a lot more, and it touches so many different parts of our world. So whether it was homeless services, teen services, elder services, there was a common thread of people who had been abused, who were being abused. And it just kind of was the one common thing that I saw everywhere, and it helped me to really decide that's what I wanted to be focusing on. And I started working in domestic violence straight out of college.
Now, I asked this same question to a couple of other of my interviewees earlier in the day. I can recall, and I'm turning 30 soon, so I remember back when I was a kid, domestic violence was something that was still sort of hush-hush, and you didn't really talk about it. It was a family thing. In your opinion, has that improved at all in the last 25, 30, 35 years?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I definitely remember that kind of response. I think that it's changed in a number of ways. Legally, the criminal justice system has changed dramatically in the past 30 years, and there's been a lot of training. There's been a lot of changes in law that has really contributed to that. When the Violence Against Women Act was first passed, that included a significant amount of money to create training and curriculum for law enforcement and those that work under the criminal justice system to really kind of understand the dynamics of abuse a little bit more and change how we were responding to it. And so that VAWA has created training and understanding and partnerships in the last 30 years that didn't exist before, and we have a much better understanding of domestic violence. So you no longer have, I shouldn't say no longer, because I think that some communities still really struggle with having appropriate responses. But in general, I think we definitely see less, take a walk around the block. This is a personal family problem, and we see more accountability. Identification of primary aggressor is a really common training that law enforcement goes through. So I think under the criminal justice system, there's been just a ton of changes legally in how domestic violence is responded to, and in other places, I just think that the public discourse around domestic violence has really changed, and social media has been a huge part of that. I don't think that radio stations were really discussing domestic violence like this, 30 years ago. So the public discourse and people being willing to discuss this and acknowledge that this is an issue that everyone needs to pay attention to has really changed.
That at least is a sort of reassuring fact. I mean, obviously the problem is still there. It's still really pervasive from all the statistics and stuff we talked about today. But at least that conversation is happening. So that's very good.
Absolutely.
It's a step in the right direction. Now, to shift things over to something that's a little more, not necessarily upbeat, but maybe a little more positive. What is your favorite thing about what you do? Like, what keeps you going day to day?
That's a good question. Day to day, there's in this work, there's a difference between when going to school to be a social worker. There were so many options to be able to do direct service, and my first work in domestic violence was direct service specific, and now that I work on more of a macro level and I don't work directly with survivors every day, you don't necessarily see how things impact survivors immediately. But we do. We do see big changes, and we see the way that programs change their services, enhance their services. We see technology companies changing products to, once they're better informed about survivors' experiences. We see them change so that settings are more privacy-focused or safety-focused. We see legislation being enacted. We see all sorts of things that we know the trickle-down impact on survivors is very positive. And I think, it might not always be as immediate as when you're doing direct services. It takes a little bit more time sometimes, but those successes are there, and there's a lot of them. I think we do some really wonderful work in the organization that I'm a part of, and I think that keeps me there for sure. The work can definitely be frustrating sometimes because it's a social issue that not everybody wants to talk about, and that a lot of people are very ignorant to still. But there's just a long list of successes of why we know that this work is very important to survivors.
And it sounds like those macro successes are just as fulfilling and meaningful as the ones on the micro level. So thank you for doing that. One more question or set of questions for you, and then we will wrap this up. Because we're always curious. How did you hear about our Week of the Warriors event, and what made you decide to want to participate?
Somebody had reached out to us, letting us know that this was happening. We get a lot of emails to our communications email. We do a lot of news. Our organization in general, we have quite a few people including our president especially, who does a lot of speaking now and a lot of news interviews. And when this one came up, because I'm originally from New York, it was something that I was a little more interested in doing and being a part of. And we always want to participate in the conversation, because we think it's absolutely a conversation that should be had, and it's so important. And so we're always trying to make sure that we reserve time to be part of these conversations. So we were just really happy to see that domestic violence was on the agenda, and we're happy to be a part of it.
And we are certainly happy to have you. Thank you so much for calling in and talking to us. We really appreciate all the work that you and your organization is doing to help people who really desperately need it. So thank you.
Thank you so much for shining a light on this.
You're welcome. If you can stay on the line just for a moment so we can sort of wrap up when we get going on that side. For everybody else listening, I will have those links and resources available, as always, on the Facebook page. So check out facebook.com/WBNY913. And it'll be cross-posted to Twitter as well. So check out @WBNY Buffalo. And we're listening to, oh my gosh, I think it's hour 16 at this point. We're going strong. To my 24 hours here at WBNY. We're doing this for WBNY's Week of the Warriors, which raises awareness about domestic violence and offers resources and support to people who may need it. And along those lines, I have a very special guest with us. With us right now is the mayor of Buffalo, Byron Brown. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, Joan.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to talk to us. We really appreciate it.
Well, my pleasure to be with you, and thank you for talking about such an important topic, the prevention of domestic violence in our communities and society.
It is something that definitely affects more people than we would like, so anything that we can do to help raise awareness and advocacy is something we are very proud to do, and I think I speak on behalf of all the station when I say that, so thank you. Let's jump right into the questions here. How would you define, from your own point of view, the nature of domestic violence and what it is?
Well, I would define it as something that can affect women of all backgrounds. We know statistically 1 in 4 women are victims of domestic violence at some point in their lives. Unfortunately, 1 in 3 teen girls through their early 30s are likely to become victims of domestic violence. And so it is a major concern that I think the entire community needs to work to prevent.
Absolutely. There's definitely a lot of advocacy that is going on. I spoke to a couple of different people today, and they mentioned a variety of resources, many in Erie County itself. So that's definitely a step in the right direction. Now, have you ever experienced domestic violence in your lifetime, be it firsthand or otherwise?
I have not experienced it in my family, but I certainly during my years in college were aware of women in the college community that experienced it. It is a traumatic thing for someone to go through that, and something that certainly as a member of society and as mayor of the city of Buffalo, I don't want to see anyone in our community go through it. We are very proactive in the city of Buffalo. Buffalo police officers are trained to handle domestic violence cases as recruits in the academy, and our police officers respond appropriately regardless of race, gender, age, language, occupation, or sexual orientation.
Now, touching on that proactivity for a moment, I understand back in 2010, you announced the creation of the Violent Crime Task Force. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, through this task force, the City of Buffalo works closely with the Family Justice Center, which is located in downtown Buffalo, 237 Main Street, and they are the organization that is on the front lines of trying to prevent domestic violence and support those who have been victims of domestic violence in our community. The Buffalo Police Department provides 2 full-time officers at the Family Justice Center as part of the task force to work on these issues.
Now, touching on Buffalo specifically, you did answer some of this in the previous question, but what is your opinion on the nature of domestic violence in Buffalo? How bad or good, rather, would the situation be here?
Well, as I mentioned, we have to be vigilant. We have to always be aware of the potential of these incidents. It's important to educate the public for prevention. It's important when domestic violence, domestic abuse is reported to follow up very aggressively and very thoroughly. During a domestic violence call, officers provide victims with referrals to local victim services, and the main agency that we refer people to is the Family Justice Center.
Now, there's been some discussion about implementing zero tolerance in reference to domestic violence in New York State. What is your opinion on that?
I agree with that. I think there should be zero tolerance to domestic violence. I don't think it has any place in communities, any place on college campuses, any place in our schools, any place in our homes, and there should be a zero tolerance. Unfortunately, we know that it is somewhat prevalent in society, and there has to be ways to rehabilitate those who previously have been engaged in domestic violence. There have to be ways that are allowed, even in a zero tolerance concept, for people to understand that their behavior was wrong, to go through a process of counseling and rehabilitation, because those people ultimately at some point will be back in society and will be back in many of the same situations where their action of domestic violence previously occurred.
So there's definitely an emphasis on rehabilitation as opposed to many, perhaps other methods of correcting people. That seems to be the larger emphasis. Am I correct on that?
Well, I think there has to be an opportunity for rehabilitation. I think that there should be a zero tolerance for it. And I think those who are domestic abusers, those who have engaged in domestic violence, need to be identified. They need to be taken out of the situation where they can continue the abuse. They need to be given an opportunity for counseling and rehabilitation. But with that being said, I do feel that there should be absolute zero tolerance.
Now, you mentioned the Family Justice Center. What are some additional resources for people who might be experiencing domestic violence or people who just want to help and get more information?
There's also the Erie County 24-hour domestic violence hotline, which I think is a very important resource. The number for there's also a national hotline, and the national hotline is an important resource. The Family Justice Center, the number for the Family Justice Center, for any listener that might be going through this, or for listeners that might know someone else that's going through it, the Family Justice Center telephone number is 716-558-7233.
Okay. With your permission, I'd like to post that on the station's social media. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, that would be certainly acceptable.
Great, thank you. A couple more questions for you. I understand how busy you are today. How did you first hear about WBNY's event this week?
Jessica Kasich, the public affairs director at WBNY, reached out to the mayor's office and asked me if I would participate in this interview. And I was certainly honored to do so, recognizing that this is such a critically important topic, something that all of us in the community need to be aware of and need to work against to reduce these alarming numbers, to reduce these alarming statistics of people experiencing domestic violence. And also, in my college years, I was also a announcer at WBNY, so anything that I can do to partner with BNY is certainly a pleasure.
We absolutely appreciate that. Thank you. Finally, do you have any final thoughts on the conversation or anything that we've discussed on so far?
My final thoughts are it is important for those who have experienced domestic violence to not be silent, to not think that it will go away, to not be fearful, to step forward and to report it and to ask for assistance. There are agencies that can help. Certainly in Buffalo, the Buffalo Police Department has officers who are all trained to assist and intervene in these situations. And certainly organizations like the Family Justice Center are critical places that people can turn to for advice, assistance, and counseling.
Absolutely. Okay, Mayor Brown, thank you so much for joining us today. If we can ask you to stay on the line for just a moment so we can conclude our session with you today.
Thank you, Joan.
You're welcome. Thank you. And again, that information for listeners, the Family Justice Center is on 230 Main Street, and that number is 716-558-7233. That information will be posted on the station's Facebook and cross-posted to Twitter, so please check that out. I'll have that up in just a moment. All right, Chris.
We have fun.
Yeah, we certainly do.
Yeah.
So please tell us a little bit.
I broke your laptop last night.
Well, that's okay. We have. I completely forgot about it until now. So you would have.
Yeah.
You've been scot-free, and then you brought it back up.
Yeah.
So now I have to hate you all over again. All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Chris.
Well, I am I don't know how I can really start this out. My lifestyle, my age,
whatever you feel is appropriate to share and you're comfortable with sharing.
Okay. Well, for starters, I am a gay 25-year-old white male. I was born and raised in Pennsylvania. I moved up here right after high school, pretty much let out because I was like, I cannot do Pennsylvania anymore. So basically had the car running at commencement.
There seems to be a common sentiment from that area. Not that I'm judging, but
oh no, there's a lot to be judged. Lived here, went to school at UB for a couple years. And then I got into a bad car accident and things like, hit the fan per se. Came to Buff State for a year part-time, worked here at BNY. And then after that, I was like, I'm having a midlife crisis at the age of 20, and I moved to New York City for a year and a half. And then I moved back here, lived here for a couple of years, and now I live in Toronto, and I just sort of like, I'm here some of the time, like I'm still on staff here, just sort of like if you guys have nowhere else to turn and you need an answer, I might maybe possibly be able to help because I've been here since like 2008.
Yeah.
But
sort of on and off, really.
Yeah. I'm kind of like a part-time volunteer DJ that fills in when no one else can, and I happen to be in town, and the stars align and the rooster crows 3 times. And
there's no snow on the ground. That's the important part.
No, I always end up in Buffalo when the snow's on the ground. It's the worst.
That's just terrible luck on your end, unfortunately. But let's talk a little bit about why we're here today.
Yes.
In your experience, how would you define domestic violence?
In my experience, there's a lot of ways that I could define it. Just basically, because in what happened to me, and we'll get into more what happened to me as time goes on. We got an hour, so it's just total domination of the abusee by the abuser. In my case, it wasn't so much physical. It was more emotional, psychological, a lot of financial. And the abuser, whether knowingly or not, exploits exploits, some kind of bond that the abusee has with them, whether it be romantic or familial or what have you. In my case, it was romantic. And this person was manipulative and totally he ran with that. And it really helped me it helped define who I am today. And it was 4 years ago, and I still I don't stand for that anymore. I don't know why I did at the time. I think it was just I was so love-starved and lonely that I would have settled for anything, anybody, and he exploited that.
And that seems to be sort of a common theme that I've been hearing throughout the day. It's a lot of, even when it's not physical, there's a lot of sometimes mental, emotional exploitation that happens.
I mean, there was a little bit of physical, but it was mainly just mental, psychological, emotional. Insults were freely thrown about. I had no and I was too much of a milquetoast to defend myself. Some of the people here that are still here might remember those instances. I'm not going to name any names as to who might have been here at the time, because that might help people pinpoint who exactly I'm talking about, for the sake of anonymity. But the people here were all they basically told me you need to get rid of him, and I was just no, as stereotypical as this is, the phrase, he'll change, I can change him, things will get better. 100% true. You have rose-colored glasses, just on you perpetually, and that doesn't change until finally you either have a breaking point or somebody intervenes. There's a whole number of factors, but I can tell you the whole story in greater depth as time goes on, if you want to.
Yeah. And again, that seems to be another common theme, and this is something that the advocates and other survivors have mentioned, where you think that, if I stay with this person, I'll be able to change. They don't really mean it towards me. It's just a temporary thing. And unfortunately, more often than not, that does not seem to be the case. Depending on your comfort level and how much you're willing to share, would you talk to us about your experience with domestic violence?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm totally willing to. If I can share my experience, as much as I don't want to sound like a martyr or like a hero or whatever phrase you want to use, stereotypical. But if I can if I can help somebody with my story, then maybe what I went through is worth it. It's never worth it to go through that, but maybe my suffering can stop somebody else's. But yeah, I'll tell as much as is necessary to get the point across that this was not okay.
Yeah.
It was only because it was only way after the fact that I realized that it was in fact abuse. It never during. During, I never called it. I never thought of it like that, and nobody ever said by name it was abuse. And I think that's very poignant, because I think abuse is sort of a taboo. Once somebody figures out that they're in an abusive relationship, there is no that's kind of just how can I phrase it? It's kind of it's kind of the one step too far, because nobody likes an abuser. Nobody likes certain things can't be forgiven in society, and I think abuse is kind of one of those. It's just, for rightly so, it has a taboo against it. But I think that's kind of why nobody actually put the A word on what was happening to me. But I think they all saw it. Everybody that was involved, everybody that knew us, they all knew that what it was. They just never actually put the word on it. So, but anyways. Sorry, I'm totally going off on tangents, and you're on you're on hour 17. So
no. It's actually, you raise a good point, and I'm hesitant to ask the question because I don't want to throw that circle of friends under the bus. But I guess my question is, was that enabling the behavior, or is that just them being ignorant of what was going on?
I don't think it was necessarily either. I think it was just because like even though they didn't use the word abuse, even though they didn't use like he's like, even though they didn't put like an exact like specific word on it, they still were like, you gotta get away.
Okay.
So they were on my side. They weren't enabling his behavior, but they were in fact they I totally lost my train of thought. I only got like 3 hours of sleep, which is totally better than where you're at right now.
That's fine. And like I said, I want to clarify that I'm not trying to insult your friends or throw them under the bus. It's just I wasn't quite sure.
No. I totally get it. And no, they like they had my back.
Okay.
They had my back. It was because of them that I finally was like, nah, we're done here. Yeah. It just took a lot of convincing, a lot of people to make me to finally like just basically slap me across the face and be like, wake up, this isn't what you should be dealing with. So, yeah.
So I hesitate to ask for specifics because again, I don't want you to go into.
I mean, ask it, and if I don't feel comfortable, I can always just say nope, pass.
That's
it's like Family Feud.
That's perfectly fine. Just the big hold your hands up like a big X and go, nah, not today.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned that it was sort of, and correct me if I'm wrong, like a gradual sort of slope, for lack of a better term. I'm just trying to think of a way to phrase this. It's a hard subject to talk about, frankly. At what point did you start to think that something was wrong, like specific instances?
Well, my case is kind of an interesting case. I'm sure it's not the only case like this. It was basically for me like love at first sight with this guy. I was like, okay, cool. And at that point, he had gotten kicked out of his family's house. So I'm like, so I was like, okay, you can stay with me. And so he moved in with me, and it was great up until he had everything moved in and everything settled, and then just out of the blue he dumped me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I think he was banking on the fact that I was too nice to say get out. Because he was right. I didn't say get out, so it was an incredibly awkward time where I wasn't actually like in a relationship with this person, but they were still living with me, and I could not escape them. And this person began to like treat me like a chauffeur, had me drive them around, would get all huffy, and like something like very, very like verbally abusive whenever I wouldn't do that. It got to the point that there was one time where because I was being looked at as a chauffeur, I was expected to, take him somewhere in the morning and pick him up at night. That's basically like what it was. It was just like, there was no questioning it. Like I just had to do this. Like I was, that was my lot in life. Meanwhile, I was working 2 jobs, like trying to pay for this stuff. And he was using my money at like an alarmingly fast rate. But like it got to the point that one of the DJs here, good friend of mine, he was in a position of authority here, and I basically said to him like because I got the call, come pick me up, and I was like, I don't want to deal with this person right now. I don't want to deal with my not boyfriend right now. So I said to my friend, I was like, hey, can you like act like you and I are going out for a BNY like thing?
Sure.
Like it got to the point that I had my friends like covering for me. Just so I could escape it, and there was no escape. Like I could not go to my apartment that I was paying rent for because he'd be there. Exactly. And I couldn't go to like it got to the point that he started like begging to like go down to my hometown with me in Pennsylvania whenever I go to visit my parents, on the basis that like I don't have a family anymore, So basically, like I opened up my home. You know, I shared my family with him, and he still treated me like garbage. And it was just such like a I didn't like I was too blind to it. Finally, it got to the point that some of my friends here were like, I think the first catalyst was when one of the people in charge here told me he's not allowed here anymore. I'm like, why? And they were like, because we see what he does to you. And I'm like, and I was kind of like in my mind, it kind of like sort of like one of the 5 switches or however many arbitrary number you want to ascribe to it clicked, but one of them was like at that point I was kind of like maybe something's wrong, but I kind of just dismissed it. I was like, okay, that sucks. You know, it's whatever, because I had brought him around here, you know, and he was obnoxious. But yeah, I mean, so that's what happened with that. And then finally, do you want me to just like go through and finish the whole story?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. I had mentioned before that like he was using all my money. He would like you know take my credit card at night and just like, you know, rack up all these charges. I'd like you know, go like buy a pack of cigarettes later on in the day and be like, declined. Really? I had $450 in there last night. Huh, that's funny. Like, you know, and so I was running out of money because he would just go on like these spending sprees, you know, like just ghetto spending sprees at like Walmart. Like he would just like spend like all of my money. Got to the point that I finally got evicted because I didn't have money to pay for the apartment. And I finally realized at that point, like, gradually other people had started to clue me in, like, this is bad news. You need to you need to make this stop. Like, you know, my friend actually was very, like, she said probably the most poignant thing to me. I said, I said to her, I was like, I'm thinking of kicking blank out. But I'm not sure. I feel like I would invite him back. And she said to me, she's like, when you cut a cancer out of your system, you don't want it to grow back. And I was like, huh. That makes sense.
Yeah.
She was like one of my strongest advocates. Like she was the one that would like whenever I was like super upset and like, you know, talking to her, like, you know, on the phone, she would like message him on Facebook, just like chew him out. Like, but he naturally didn't get it. Because he wasn't that bright, just manipulative. I think I've earned the moral victory that I can kind of like talk badly about him. Not to be like, you know, super like egotistical or anything, but it's just one of those things. But like, finally, when I got evicted, I realized all of my money just paid to be abused. Why would I continue to do this? When I find a new apartment, why would I take him with me to continue this cycle? And I was like, and I said, you're not coming with me. And he's like, where will I go? I'm like, not my problem. And that was the last that we spoke. And I don't look back. But it was just like, in the whole process, sorry, I just only blew like a gigantic pee into the mic.
It's all right.
Yeah. In the whole process of like leading up to this eviction, the verbal abuse just got worse and worse. Again, like some physical abuse was thrown in there. At one point, he called me physically repulsive, just because he could. And it was like the worst part about it was he was never like under the influence of anything. It was just like that's how he was. He was just like an immature brat, and he thought that you know, treating me like garbage was the way to get ahead. So, yeah, it happened, and I can't believe that I let it happen because I'm a strong person. I don't let crap like that happen to me. I don't, you know. Like, I survived a car accident. I survived the lawsuit from the car accident. I moved out to New York City. I actually made it out there for a little bit, you know, like, and then I came back and I was letting this happen to me. I don't know why I did. I think again it was just like I was so like starved for love and attention, and just I was so despondent and lonely that I just couldn't let myself, I would rather be abused than alone. I think was probably like the end game there, which is such like a stupid way to look at things, but that was the way I looked at it. I was, a little bit younger, a little bit less wise, if you will. And, I got evicted. It is what it is. So, but I mean, I think that really helped me to, learn what, how can I phrase it? Like, it helped me learn what not to tolerate. Like, that's why these days I'm like I'm just really, lose my train of thought. I'm such like a strong advocate of like, survivors of domestic violence. I refuse to let anybody, I refuse to see that. That's basically, yeah. I mean, like, I wish there were more I could do, but I don't know what I can do. But yeah, that's basically what I like. What my story is. Just. I knew it wasn't okay, but at the same time I tolerated it because I didn't want to be alone.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's certainly a story that I think needs to be told. And not to play armchair therapist here, but I think it's important to also keep in mind that a quote that somebody I look up to says is that nobody's mind is unhackable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just... You see it happening, or you hear it happening to other people, and you think, God, that can't be me. And then when it happens, not you specifically, but generally speaking, the general you, we often have a tendency to blame ourselves. Like I should have noticed this. This shouldn't have happened to me. And it's just, unfortunately, it happens. But I'm glad that you are one of the people who managed to pull themselves out of that situation.
It took an eviction, but I did.
Yeah, but sometimes you have to do that thing just to
you have to hit
save
rock
yourself.
bottom.
Yeah.
Which I mean, in hindsight, it could have gotten a lot worse.
Yeah.
Like I was never homeless. Basically, the only difference was like. On the end of the month, I stayed at one place with an abuser, and the next day I had me and a couple of friends move all my stuff to the new place, and he didn't come with me. And he's like, "Where do I go from here?" I'm like, "Walk." Like I was just so done. I couldn't do it anymore. I was just beyond, like, as callous and cold as this makes me sound, like I was just beyond caring.
Well, there's a certain point. People have certain points, and when you're dealing with that kind of treatment for so long, particularly when it's unjustified, not that this treatment would ever really be justified, but there's a mental breaking point, and you just have to go, enough. I'm done. This is I cannot live this way any longer.
Exactly. And
not to sound corny or stereotypical, but it does take a certain strength to do that because, unfortunately, many people can't.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'm like I said before, I'm glad you were able to realize that and go, I'm done. I'm not putting up with this anymore. My life is better than this.
Exactly. Things were so much better afterwards, but
yeah. So let's go ahead and do some college announcements here. I'll get set up. Before I do that, though, is there anything else you'd like to add before we go to break?
Not right this second. I think maybe when we come back, we can talk about like what I would advocate people that might be going through a similar situation could do. Because I didn't take the route of like, going to the authorities or like calling like a shelter or anything like that. Because I mean that does seem like it's almost like as weird as this is, like it almost sounds like a machismo thing. Especially like, if you're a guy, you don't want to like, go to somebody else for help. I think that's kind of what perpetuated my problem a little bit. Was like, I didn't want help. I thought I can handle it myself. But I feel like maybe I can give ideas for people that might be in the same situation that I was or similar as to how to deal with the problem.
Absolutely.
So
we'll have more from Chris when we come back. You're listening to 91.3 FM WBNY. This is part of WBNY's Week of the Warriors, where we're bringing awareness and information about domestic abuse out to people, not just in Buffalo, but across America. So like I said, I am back with Chris, and we are talking about some of his experiences with domestic violence. So Chris, why don't you go ahead and pick up where we left off?
The whole story, it was kind of just like it began and it ended. I think I'm a stronger person for it. The way, as we were talking about before the break, I totally. That's a great way to sound professional.
That's all right. That's all right.
I'm good at radio, guys. But
that's been me all day, so don't worry about it.
No, it's been you past like hour 8. Normally you're incredible on air. Don't worry. But like what did you interview yourself with?
Just my pride, sir.
What?
Just my pride.
No,
go ahead. I'm just kidding.
Oh, well, I was giving you a compliment, madam.
My lady.
We're friends, everyone. If you can't tell, we know each other outside of Week of the Warriors.
Allow me to tip my fedora in your general direction and then allow you to continue.
I shall flare out my blouse. But I was mentioning before the break that I didn't go to like any professional agency, possibly because I'm a super independent person. I hate going to people for help, because I'm just such like, I can handle this. I got this. I'm on my game, guys. I'm so glad that other people had my back on my behalf, because I don't know how it would have ended. I mean, I would have gotten evicted either way, but I don't know. Who knows? I might have taken the scumbag sleaze, as Honeyblood put it, with me. Had other people not tipped me into, hey, this is not okay, you need to let it stop beforehand. So ways that I think you or somebody that if you're going through like a situation like this, friends, get people on your side. A friend that's worth their weight in salt will support you. They're not going to be like, yeah, they'll change. If they see something wrong, they're going to have your back. As was true with me. The friends that I had, whether or not they called it, what it was, abuse, they still had my back. They were like, yeah, we'll help you out. We'll help you move. We'll help you, we'll help cover for you when you don't want to, go back to, an abusive household. So the more people you have on your side, the easier it is. The second you realize something is amiss, it probably is. The second that person says something nasty to you, the second that person touches you in a way you don't want to be touched, the second that person, uses your money before, like, without your consent, which, by the way, that's theft. Just so you know, so you have something, maybe to go to the cops about. The second they try to manipulate you, the second they do anything to you that is not within your right, that's when the alarm bells should start going off in your head. I, unfortunately, again, for the reasons I mentioned before, loneliness, rather be, hurting than alone, this, that, the other thing. I did not have those alarm bells going off immediately, but hopefully somebody else is, they're more cognizant of their situation than I was. Maybe, again, because I was also young when it happened. So I, was just inexperienced. I'm like, maybe it'll change.
And it's important to remember to mentally step back, even if it's just to yourself and thinking, wait a minute, have I done really anything to deserve being treated this way? And even if you did, do they have the right to treat you that way? And more often than not, that answer is going to be no.
Exactly. They never have the right to treat you that way. If you have a situation like that where something is not right, if you know it, a family friend of mine put up a Facebook post about a week ago, which this is so like millennial of me to be like, I saw on Facebook, but he said something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have the quote right in front of me, but it's something along the lines of, always trust your gut. If it doesn't seem right, it's probably not.
Yeah.
If you feel like you're in a relationship that isn't benefiting you, then
bail.
Yeah, get out. And it's the hardest thing in the world to do, because the hardest thing is to, one, admit to yourself that you made a mistake with this person. A lot of people have like really heightened sense of egos, myself included. And I'm not saying that, like, victims of abuse have egos. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that at least in my case, was a reason, because I did not want to admit I was wrong. I was wrong about this person. They were not what I thought they were at all.
And that's the thing too, right? There's 7 billion people in the world, and you're not going to be dead on about all of them, or even a handful of them. It's you take your chances, and unfortunately, sometimes those chances don't lead to many positive returns.
Exactly. But even like the worst possible relationship should not include abuse.
Agreed.
Like you can have a relationship that just like falls apart, but there should never be a hand. Like, there should never be, somebody struck. There should never be somebody insulted. There should never be somebody, manipulated. There should never be somebody, sexually, manipulated, abused, however you want to phrase it, raped, so on.
Mm-hmm.
These things should not happen. Mm-hmm. Whether you're in, LGBT relationship, whether you're in a straight relationship, whatever, familial. If this is, if it's harming you, better to cut ties.
Mm-hmm. And it's important to know that there is a distinction between playing around with your significant other, whoever that happens to be, and insulting them. For example, my boyfriend right now will call each other, like a butt. Like, yeah, you're a butt. But we know it's nothing. It's us playing around. It's us being silly. But if he or I to him, if he were to say to me, or I would say to him something more serious than that, like, oh, you're a total insult here.
Mm-hmm.
That's the point where you have to step back and go, whoa, why is this happening? What is my reaction to this? And realize that something is amiss. There is no reason for a relationship to be like that, a healthy relationship. And if you're not in a healthy relationship, get out.
Exactly. like my current boyfriend, and I, I'll just be like, you're a dork,
Yeah, exactly.
And he'll be like, yeah, well, you're a fart, but it's like, there's never any malice behind it.
Right. It's just playing around. And my boyfriend and I, we call each other nerds all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not inaccurate. It's very true.
Exactly. Like even like my friendships, like one of my best friends, like one of his name for me is Gay Kid.
My God.
And it's like I think that's more of like like a person to person thing.
Sure.
But it's like, for me, I'm just like, that's totally cool. Like I don't have a problem with it, because that's just me. It's
right.
It's whatever. So I'm just like, so I call him Fat Jesus in response, because he looks like a very, very rotund Jesus Christ of Nazareth, and it's just like there's no malice behind it.
It's two people who know each other well enough to recognize the difference between kidding around and obvious in jokes and things like that, and real legitimate hurtful statements or malice, and that is a very, very important distinction. And sometimes you need to step back and have the self-awareness to go, whoa, wait a minute, this is not a comment that I should be accepting if it's that negative. There's a difference between calling somebody, oh, you're a dork, or you nerd, whatever, and calling somebody, again, insert your choice of insult.
Exactly. Here. Like in my abusive relationship, the guy that shall not be named, he on more than one occasion will call me a fat ass. Fat ass, and like just all these other words I can't say on air, and it was just such a thing. It perpetuated itself because he would call me these things, and I would just like, I'd worship the ground he walked on, and I would just be like, okay, I guess I am. And so I started looking at myself like just even worse. But we tangented a little bit, I think.
And that's,
but
it's, I
mean, it's fine.
It's
but
worth, discussing.
But what I was saying was what was I gonna say? I like, in regards to how I handled the situation. First off, I had friends that helped me through. I had people that I could count on, to basically have my back. Like I mentioned, my friend Mel. She was the one that was always like, whenever I told her about, like, well, he did this to me, she immediately like just fired him on Facebook, just like out of and then of course, like it had like a double-edged sword effect because the scumbag would then be like, why'd you sick your friend on me, and I'd be like, I didn't, but yeah. I'm glad she did it. So basically, like it came back at me, but at the same time, like there's one part of my mind that was like, good on you, Mel. Good on you. Yeah. But have friends. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It doesn't make you weak to ask for help. I really wish I had known what I know now back then, because I feel like I could have stopped perpetuating a whole lot of the suffering that I was not inflicting upon myself, but the suffering that he was inflicting on me.
Well, it's I hate to be cliche again, but it's like, hindsight's 20/20. It's you take these experiences and you get yourself out of them, and then you use that experience, one, to better yourself, and two, to better other people, like what you're doing right now. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, if I can help somebody out with my less than stellar life experience, then it's worth it. Yeah. What else was I gonna say? For those of you that like maybe you're in like an unfamiliar town, you don't have a whole lot of people that you can go to. There's always a hotline you can call. I don't know the numbers offhand. I should have come prepared.
It's okay. I've got them for you.
Okay.
If you want more information, or if you find yourself in a situation where you need to talk to somebody, in Erie County, there's a 24-hour domestic violence hotline number. It's 716-862-HELP. That's 716-862-4357. If you are listening to this elsewhere in America and you want additional help, or if you want a national number, I will pull it up for you now. Excuse me. It is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. The number is 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. You can also check out thehotline.org. All this information is available on WBNY's Facebook page at facebook.com/WBNY 913. So definitely check that out if you want more information, or if you find yourself in the unfortunate position of needing assistance. But there is assistance out there. All of the people I've spoken to today have thrown out of a little gaggle of resources that are available. You're not alone in this, and that's very important to remember. It's not. There's help available.
Talk to friends, talk to family, talk to the police. You can always call like the police and be like, "This is happening. I need help," and they will. If they directly can't do something for you, they will direct you to somebody who can.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, if you were in Buffalo, I mentioned this earlier when we got off the phone with Mayor Brown. But if you're in Buffalo, there's a Family Justice Center on 230 Main Street, and their phone number is 716-558-7233. Again, that's 716-558-7233 for some local assistance. And actually, I don't know if all states do this. I know definitely New York State does, from what I was told. If you call 211, they will connect you to a local operator. And that local operator will give you additional resources and stuff that's particular to your neighborhood or your county, I believe. I'm still looking up information on that, but that's a good resource. It's not often used. So,
I mean, I know for our Canadian listeners, Ontario does that, or at least Toronto does. I'm not sure.
Do you know that information offhand, or? I can pull it up if we need to.
I mean, I believe it's 211. I'm not entirely sure. I can at least pull up the Ontario numbers because I am totally prepared for things.
That's okay.
But
That's all right. It's been
Ontario.
It's been one of those days, and this is a very difficult subject to talk about. So it's I know for me it's been difficult for me to ask questions and formulate opinions and thoughts on it because it's something that affects a lot of people, and it's again, I'm gonna sound like a cornball, but it's very sad, and it's something that shouldn't happen to people, and unfortunately does.
Yeah. Oh yeah. For Ontario, the toll-free hotline, if you're a woman who's experiencing abuse, I'm not sure of one for men, but at least for women, the hotline is 1-866-863-0511. That is for the assaulted women's helpline. They have branches both in the GTA, so Greater Toronto area, and also Ontario wide.
Mm.
So, yeah.
And I'll make sure that information is posted on Facebook for any Canadian listeners that are tuning in, and if they want more information or if they find themselves in a position needing help.
Mm.
Okay, Chris, we're going to have to wind down.
Okay.
It's getting to the top of the hour, so we need to start
Plus,
setting up.
I don't know if we have any more to talk about. I mean, I think I kind of
answered all the questions there.
The questions, the stuff, and the things.
Thank you very much for taking time out of your day and sharing your experiences and helping us out this week.
Absolutely. Again, if somebody gets helped out by this, then I have done something good. I suppose being a I don't know, I can't say the phrase on air. How can I put it?
A very helpful person.
7-letter word that begins with A, ends with E.
You're gonna get. I know you're from Canada, but you're gonna get the FCC on us, man.
I can allude. I cannot say.
That is true. That is true. I do have a song to take us out.
Oh, but I had a song.
Oh well, all right.
Yeah, I just need to make the thing appear.
Is that a safe song?
It has one swear word that I will censor out.
Okay.
Because I'm a master at censoring things.
All right, what song do we got coming up?
This is one of my favorite tracks. I think it's kind of like a good track for pretty much anybody who might be going through a bad situation. It's called We Become Heroes. It's by a British rapper named The Streets.
Okay.
Just like really excellent track. Because Britain kind of does rap better. They kind of do a lot of popular music better.
It's a polarizing statement, sir.
Fighting words. All right, well, here we go. All right, yeah, so whenever we're ready, I can press the play
we're
button.
good to go.
All right. So thank you so much for having me, Joan.
Thank you for coming on and talking to us. Really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. And hopefully you guys will hear me around on a not so serious matter, because I can do serious, don't like doing it well. So
the effort is definitely appreciated. So
I like to kind of just screw around on air, because I'm professional.
maybe next week.
Yeah, maybe next week if I'm around.
Yeah. Getting back on point. This is 91.3 FM WBNY, and we are doing the Week of the Warriors, and I have my interviewee here with me. So, hello, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Trying to stay awake. Just trying to keep it going. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Robin Powers. Currently a mom, newly single mom, and a current domestic violence survivor and past as well.
Well, first of all, thank you for coming in and being willing to talk to us. It's very much appreciated.
Not a problem.
Now, you mentioned that you experienced domestic violence. Would you feel comfortable explaining some of the stuff that happened to you?
Yeah, sure. As a child, my dad progressively started to develop paranoid schizophrenia. And with that, most people know like what the symptoms can be and are. And he started to believe that he was God himself, which obviously is going to create problems. And, my mom couldn't really put the whole entire picture together, and she just wanted to help him. So we ended up living out in the country. When I was about 7, finally we left. I mean, we were pretty close to homeless. We were just getting like government food because he didn't want to take food stamps because it was from, quote unquote, the man. And he wanted to take us to heaven, which I understood what that meant. So I was like, hey, we got to go. We can't help him anymore. We got to go. And I was about 7. And then there was some incidences with deadly weapons, which I don't want to bring too much into that because it's private information, but it was very extreme. So that was the past. And then up until then, I didn't get to see my dad. I never have, actually. All records are blocked. He blocked them. And there was a restraining order a stay-away order until I was 21, actually, in place for him. He could only get visitation if he passed a psych eval and if it was supervised at all times. So, but he just chose not to. He would send, like, creepy, weird notes and stuff to my mom, like, don't leave the kids alone on Thursday or something like that. So that was kind of weird.
To put it mildly,
yeah.
I would imagine.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep it mild because it's that I just learned mostly about it recently. I mean, I knew a lot about it, but some of the stuff that I did learn really shocked me, and I thought that I had already been shocked as a child, so it even shocked me and blew me away. So that was definitely on the extreme end in my mind. I mean, I know that it can get more extreme than that. I'm still alive. I'm still here. I'm healthy. My mom's healthy. My family's healthy. I have a healthy son. So that's all great. My dad's allegedly living somewhere else and is okay, which is great, which is all that I want. I just wish that I could know that someday for real. But so.
But for now, it's I would assume it's definitely a take it one day at a time sort of situation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I've been doing since I was a kid, and I didn't even see, the current situation that I'm in develop as it did. It just happened, and then I was like, wow, I guess domestic violence really does breed domestic violence, and in this case, me being a victim again, I didn't see it coming. It just slowly took over, and then I started to put all the pieces together as other people told me, hey, he's controlling all of your actions, so that was kind of a shocker too.
Do you feel comfortable going into detail about the second incident?
Yeah, that's sure. Sure, that's not a problem. So about 2 years ago, I met my ex, and or we were together for about 2 years. Can't remember quite how long. It's a little over 2 years ago. And I was working as a computer technician. He was too. We were working together. We started dating quickly. The whole you start a relationship very quickly, and they just kind of grasp on very quickly. It's kind of characteristic of the whole thing, which I didn't know and didn't see. But within 3 months, he was already living at my apartment. I was told that I was infertile. Ended up being pregnant, even though I was like, hey, even though I'm infertile, that doesn't mean that I can't get pregnant. I still can. It just means that the probability is low. But he didn't listen nor care about that. He just said, you won't. So I ended up getting pregnant. I didn't find out until I was in almost my second trimester. I was like 1 week away from it because I've got some odd endocrine disorders. So they couldn't really tell. The tests were negative. I did many tests, negative. So all of a sudden I'm pregnant, and I decided obviously to keep the child because I just in my heart couldn't even think of the word to not have him. So I asked him, I was like, will you be in his life? And he promised me that he would. But then slowly he just started taking over everything. Like all of a sudden, I'm not allowed to work. I'm not allowed to leave the house. I have to go lay down when he tells me to. He'd take my phone. He'd decide, you know what, it's going to be better for you if you don't take your medicine. Take my medicine. Like he would just control absolutely everything. So then, I had a very difficult pregnancy. I had the baby. He was very happy, I remember, and looked very proud. But then he couldn't handle it, in my opinion. Wasn't ready for it. And he had problems coping with, baby crying at night, not getting enough sleep and stuff like that. And he's like, well, you're home all day. All that you do is sleep. And it's like, I don't sleep all day. That's not what taking care of a child is about. He was spending his money on things I don't even know what they were, video games, cigarettes, coffee, anything except the rent and his responsibilities. So my mom had to step in and pay a lot of that. We got evicted from one apartment when I was pregnant. Then my mom basically helped, as well as me selling my car. And he didn't pay rent for almost the entire relationship that we had. He paid very little towards utilities, and that's about it. We went through like 5 different cell phone plans and companies. He's got a lot of debt in his name. Thankfully, it was mostly in his name. And then all of a sudden, in January, he just kind of snapped, I guess. Or I'm not sure if it seems like it was premeditated, like it was planned. But first there was him wanting to take my son to his sister's without me wanting that. I just wanted him as a test to see how he would do for the night by himself. He insisted on doing that, and I said no. And he didn't believe me when I said no meant no this time. I showed up back at the house. I was at my mom's. And I said, don't make me call 911. And I'm dialing it on my cell phone. I'm like, see, here's my cell phone, 911. Please don't make me hit send. He said, you have to. You have to hit send if you want this to even go possibly your way. So I hit send, I call, and obviously they say, in this situation, the baby's going to stay with the primary caregiver, which is the mother. So you just go to work, the baby's staying with her. His family just shows up. Even though I told them basically, I'd really prefer that we just don't do this another day. It's nothing against you guys, but with what's going on with us, not a good idea. Mm-hmm. So they just show up at my mom's, take my son. So that was the first incident. Then after they take my son to have his sister watch my son the next morning, my ex just picked up my son without telling me from that location and brought him to his mom's, so that it was because of a snowstorm. When in where we lived and where his sister lived, the weather was perfectly fine. So basically he went into the snowstorm, drove into it on purpose. I don't see how it couldn't have been. He made me guess where my son was. He's like, guess. I'm like, what do you mean guess? He's like, there's only one place I could be. Actually, I was like, there's an infinite amount of places that you could be. Who knows where you are? I don't know where you are. You could be in Canada. You could be in Pennsylvania. I don't know where you are. Just tell me where you are. He would not tell me because he was not at our apartment. So I had to call the police, and finally he ended up telling me, but I had already called the police. Unfortunately, there really wasn't that much that they could do, which I didn't know. Apparently he was allowed to do what he was doing because he was kind of lying about it and saying, it's the weather. I promise that the baby will be back in her arms the next day. Baby was not. It took me 4 days to get my son back. Then I saw, some very violent threats. Showed that to the police, and they said, just stay where you are at your mom's. Don't have your son really leave. So I just did what they said. He tried to say that I was trying to keep his son from him, and I would never keep his son from him unless it was something that, others were deeming an emergency situation where he needs to just stay away and cool off. Every single time was supposed to be hey, take a step back, breathe, cool off a little bit. But it didn't really end up that way. It just kept escalating and snowballing until finally he took my left arm, twisted it behind my back, and pushed me back inside our apartment. My son was at my mom's. This was in the morning at like 7:30 a.m. We were supposed to go to the HEAP office because he hadn't paid the bills, and I was like, hey, HEAP can help us. So I was going to go with them. I just wanted to lay down for 15 minutes, and it started this massive argument. So that resulted in him having a stay away for a month, and then that got extended for 6 months. So right now there's a 6-month stay away for me, and he has visitation, but it's less than it's just under 2 days. He gets to stay over 2 nights, but the exchange needs to be done at the police station. So it's very, I never saw any of that stuff coming, but I'm just doing what I think is best for my son to protect him, so.
And I'm not a parent, so I can't imagine the kind of turmoil that must have been for you.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that he thinks that, I enjoyed doing that kind of stuff, and it was awful. It made me cry. I felt so bad, but I just was doing what I knew was best and what I was told was best by, police and lawyers and just everybody was saying this is what's best right now. He needs to cool off, and he just didn't cool off. He just kept coming back more intensely because he was losing control, and the whole entire thing is about control. So once he started to see that he was losing all control, he was grabbing at anything that he could to try and regain control. But he needs to hopefully learn that that's not how a healthy relationship is going to work at all, even with his, son. He needs to develop a healthy relationship with his son, which I want very badly, but, that's going to take some work.
Mm-hmm. Now, you touched a bit on this question earlier with your answer, but how do you think this experience changed you, if it has?
It's definitely changed me. I could say I'm glad that I stuck to my thought in my mind. I'm not going to let this relationship go on any longer than 1 year for my child, like after he was born, because I knew that after 1 year he would have a higher chance of recalling the information and remembering any of the trauma. And I was like, I don't want that, because I remember the trauma as a child. And before I didn't think that I would end up in the same type of relationship. I thought I learned better or whatever from my childhood, but I didn't, obviously. And I ended up in something that could have ended up being just as bad, but at least I caught it a little bit quicker, I would say. So my past made me catch it quicker, but I was blind to the fact that it could happen to me as well. But now I'm breaking the cycle, and it's definitely not going to happen to my son.
Which is something that is difficult, but you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You're definitely doing it. If you could go back in time, and obviously this is a hypothetical, of course, but if you can go back in time and talk to yourself or give yourself support or, advice, what would you say to that past version of you?
Oh, I would tell that past version of me, once I found out that I was pregnant, to just leave him. Just leave him. And he could find out when he was more mature that he had a son, or he could find out as us broken up that he had a son. But I don't think that we should have stayed together, because the relationship already really wasn't working out. And I'd heard from other people that he wanted to break up with me. He wanted to break up with me the entire time, basically, that I was pregnant and everything. Before I was even pregnant, it's like he planned out this whole entire thing. And he thought that it would work out in his favor. I still don't know what the final verdict will be, but, I mean, I'm the primary caregiver. Baby's in perfect health. He beat all the odds that the doctors were saying, because I do have a genetic disease myself, a connective tissue disorder. And they were like, with the connective tissue disorder and the medications that you're on, with you not knowing that you were pregnant, there's all these chances of all these defects and stuff. And I did all this research because I was a pharmacology major, and I showed it with over 100 pages worth of research. They were wrong. They were wrong. He beat all the odds. He's perfectly healthy. He just has some protein sensitivities like milk and wheat, but that's about it. Otherwise, he's perfectly healthy. So,
congratulations for that. Thank God for that.
Thank you. I was very happy to have a healthy baby, boy, girl. I didn't really care. Just healthy baby.
I think healthy would be the primary focus, and I think that's what I would assume that's what most parents would want. Regardless, just, is my child going to be okay?
Hopefully.
Yeah. How has your experiences been since you've gotten yourself out of your situation? Are you having any trouble getting anything done as far as court or legal services or support, etc.?
Thankfully, since my mom's been through this and far more, she's there for me, supporting me and helping me. She got me a good lawyer from the start, even though I was just going to take the court-appointed lawyer. My mom was like, no, we're going to do this the right way. We're going to get you a good lawyer and just start out good from the start. And she thankfully is letting my son and I stay there until we can find a better arrangement. And she wants it to be the best arrangement possible. She's not just going to have it be the first opportunity. So thankfully, I have good support. But it is, hard. It's not harder than it was. My ex assumed that it would be so much harder, and I would realize that I was in some kind of dreamland before, and everything was just amazing before. But, yeah, it's hard being a single mom, but it's much easier still in retrospect when I compare before to now. I mean, it's still very hard to get around with him and stuff, because he just seems a little traumatized with going back and forth places, because he's just been shuffled around to so many different places. So I try and avoid that, but everything gets done. And before, everything didn't get done. So it's easier. It's not much easier, but it's definitely easier and now doable, at least. I can actually take care of myself now, too.
And that's the thing that I think most people in that situation have to remember. Like, aside from your child or your kids, you have to take care of yourself, because that's that's also as important as taking care of your children.
Right. Like, if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your kids. And that's what my ex also didn't understand. I kept stating, I was like, I have to be able to take care of myself. Like, I had to get an MRI done, and he wouldn't wake up to watch my son. He had me miss it. So, you know, I got to be able to take care of myself, and he thought that it would be impossible for me to do without his help. But he didn't realize how his help was really negative help. Negative work is what I called it. It was negative. Made everything just more complicated, more difficult, more annoying.
Yeah. Is there anything offhand that you can think of that you might need help or additional assistance with?
Finding a safe place to live that is affordable for, you know, a single mom that's been through now 2 domestically violent situations, still trying to get my head around all of that in the middle of the court system, only having temporary assistance and food stamps, which are pretty much all being used towards my son's formula. He needs a special toddler formula. It's $25 a can. And father doesn't want to pay child support. So instead of I'm just using everything that I have for this formula because I know that it's what's best for him, and I will take that hit, obviously. I'm not going to give him what would be second best or third best. I'm going to give him what's going to be best because it really matters at the beginning that you do everything correctly. You can't really go back and fix it.
Right.
So really just help in general. I mean, finding a safe place to live that is possible for somebody to afford when they're already trying to afford the correct treatment for their son. When I mean, I do get food stamps, which is great, and I'm so thankful for that. And I do get temporary assistance, which I never had before, and I'm so thankful for that. But it can only do so much if you end up having to pay out of pocket for something that should be covered underneath insurance, which I'm fighting for, but it's ending up being far more of a fight than I thought that it would be. So somewhere to live, that's what I really need help with.
Yeah.
Somewhere safe.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, I think we'll go ahead and wrap this up. If anybody listening can offer any insight in addition to the resources that we've talked about earlier and throughout the day, definitely give us a call. We're at 716-878-5104. And I'll repeat some of those earlier resources that we had throughout the time. I want to thank you, Robin, for coming in and for talking to us and just for pushing yourself, through to all this. I mean, it's
not a problem. I just hope that I can help others out there that are still in the process of finding out that they are in some kind of bad situation, because I do know some people that are, and they're not ready to get out of it, but they need to, and they need to fight because it's worth it for them, for their children, for their family. It's worth it just for them. They need to survive this, realize that it's happening, and not let domestic violence breed more domestic violence. Stop the cycle. Break the cycle. Breaking the cycle has got to be the hardest thing to put on someone, is to break the cycle. But you have to, for yourself and for your children and for your family and for everyone. I mean, for society in general. You have to show them that it is possible. So.
Absolutely. Okay. Robin, thank you again for coming and talking to us. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Like I said, you're listening to 91.3 FM, WBNY.
You're listening to WBNY, Buffalo's original alternative since 1982. Brought to you by the College Student Activity Fee.
Here at Buffalo State College.
This is Jessica.
And DJ Connor.
We're going to take over for about an hour. Joan is having a little break.
She's been putting a lot of effort into the show, a lot of thoughts and efforts. So we gave her like a little sleepy time, and she'll be back in to finish you guys off.
All right, on air we have USG Vice President. Are you there?
Yep.
Yay!
Hi, USG Vice President.
Hello.
So I'm seeing here, you sent me a text message. I don't know who them were. Is it just you from USG?
Oh, no, it's just me.
Okay. Okay, so to start it off, I'd like you to introduce yourself and then explain kind of what you do with the vice presidency.
Sure. So my name is Emily. As you said, I'm the vice president of USG. I'm also a student, though. I'm studying music.
That's
currently,
awesome.
Actually.
What year?
Basically.
Why? Why do you have to whisper?
What year are you?
I'm a junior.
Oh, that's very good.
Basically, what I do with USG, I do a lot of stuff internally. I do a lot of work with our staff and with what we do with our organizations. I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes, not so much up front, but it's a lot of fun, and I get to do a lot of interaction with students and faculty and all that kind of stuff just to better the student body and better what we're doing for our students and to provide for them, especially through the student activity.
As Vice President of USG, what does our Buffalo State student government have to say about domestic violence?
You know, we understand that it's not simple and it's not something that can be taken care of overnight, but we support our students in many facets, and we understand that it's not always easy to report domestic violence. It comes in many shapes and forms, and we know that if you need a helping hand, we can certainly guide you to the right people to talk to. We may not be the correct solution for you, but we can help if ever necessary.
That sounds very deep.
Oh my God.
Thank you for your thoughts.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, he's throwing me off. Have you ever experienced domestic violence in your lifetime?
I have not. Personally, I've been very lucky to not experience anything like that. I've seen it, and I know people who have experienced it, but I have not myself.
Because as you know, the statistic is 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men have experienced domestic violence in their lifetime.
Yeah, I have heard that. That's crazy.
Does USG do anything to support the end to domestic violence, both on or off campus?
So USG itself is a legislative body, and we also provide events and stuff like that. We do a lot of community service as an organization, as well as our subsidiary organizations. We fund 46 organizations. So a lot of our organizations do things like Spread the Word to End the Word, which is Best Buddies, and CEC. It's not about domestic violence, but it is about, kindness and what we can do to help, the population, what we can do to solve the problem that we see. We do things with refugee centers for the homeless who have faced domestic violence, stuff like that. So we definitely have our hands in a couple of different pools.
Does USG have anything to do with Take Back the Night?
We do not directly do anything, but we do help volunteer.
Okay. How did you hear about this event?
I was actually contacted by the USG president, Ashley Ann Sutherland. She asked me if I would be interested in helping with WBNY about this event, and I think it's a great cause.
Why did you want to participate in Week of the Warriors?
It's just something I really respect. I think it's a great thing for you guys to take a stand on, and I think it's different from what we usually do, and it's a topic that needs to be discussed. So
we were thinking about doing this again in October, maybe changing it up a little and trying to make it even bigger of an event. Do you have any kind of ideas that USG might be able to help with?
Definitely. I mean, you could always plan a Bengal Plaza event. You could get the social hall, see if you could bring some local people in, local performers. You could have local events. You could always see if you could get collaboration with different organizations, especially humanitarian organizations. They're all over Buffalo. There's plenty of places that would love to collaborate with us, so that's definitely something that you should look into.
Definitely.
I have to whisper because it gets our listeners to listen in even closer.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We've been asking this question to a lot of our guests. How would you specifically define domestic violence?
That's a tricky one. I think that a lot of people envision domestic violence as just something physical, when really it's not just physical. It can be emotional. It can be, a really mental thing too. So I would say that it's a complicated subject, but I think it has to deal with the degradation of somebody and making it more difficult for them to be who they are and to accept who they are and to live their lives the way they should be.
So I also have an event coming, hopefully, to Buffalo State called Vanity Violence, and I'm hoping to try to get as much support in that as possible. Do you have any advice to try to bring, it's kind of like Take Back the Night, but specifically domestic violence. And do you have any advice to bringing that to the social hall?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on when you want to do it. Bringing that to the social hall is something that you would need to book kind of ahead of time. I know that this space is completely booked for this semester, but if you wanted to get space next semester, that's something that you would contact the student union for, and that's all available on their website. But you should definitely book it. The cost is very low for sound. It's like $13 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not crazy. The space itself is free.
Another question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years if no obstacles were in front of you?
Oh, wow. If there were no obstacles, in 5 years, I'd be 25, which is kind of scary. But, I mean, I guess I see myself having a job and hopefully starting a family and living on my own. You know, that's something that I hope for in 5 years from now. I definitely want to embody what I see as successful.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there anything you think that any kind of events coming up for USG? Any, like, you can, this is your plug right now, that you can plug anything that you want right now?
Oh, definitely. You know, this week, when we come back, we're on spring break now, but when we come back, it's referendum time, and it's important that we vote mandatory as a student body. We vote yes for mandatory. Without referendum, without our budget, basically there's no organization funding. We can't have any events. We can't supplement anything. You know, we would lose our 2-cent printing and our dental clinic and WBNY, and all of our organizations would have zero funding, and, you know, we would cease to exist, which is really scary. That's the 30th of the 2nd in the student union in the lobby by the bookstore. We're also doing a Flashback Friday dance. It's this Friday, April 3rd. Yep, April 3rd. And it's 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. in the gym, in the sports arena, I'm sorry. It's going to be really cool. It's through Student ID. We're collaborating with BAM and the Pound Dance team as well as Student Life. And it's definitely something that everybody should come out for and look forward to Relaxation Week as well as Spring Fest, which is coming up, and that's going to have a whole week of events.
All right.
Okay.
Is there anything else you would like to add before we go to a break?
No, not at all. But thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so for the listeners, that was Emily, the vice president of our student government at Buffalo State. I want to thank her for coming online. Also, the whisperer is Connor.
Yo, what's up?
Oh, now you can stop.
I only felt like talking at that one time. I felt like being cool and trying to say what's up. Because kids like to, as these days, say, what is up? So, you know. What's up?
Okay. Thank you, Emily, for coming online.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
That was nice.
That was.
Okay, so.
It was nice to hear from our student government.
It's nice not to whisper anymore.
Oh, yeah.
See, I only wanted our listeners to listen to that one portion. I mean, now the only thing they have forward to listening to, I think, is some music. Is that right? Yeah? We have our music ready?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Wait, I want to hear about what does Connor think about domestic violence?
You want to hear my thoughts on domestic violence? Okay. Domestic violence is simple. It's anytime that a person, abuser, whatever you want to call them, forms any form of discomfort in another individual's life, and that person takes it in as a victim.
Have you ever experienced it? You, yourself, your family, somebody?
I've never been the victim. I've never been the person doing it. However, I have seen it happen, and I have done what I could. Oh, I've never saw it with you. Stop making this about you.
He's talking to Chris.
Who? No, it's fine. I've seen it happen with some friends of mine, and I've actually done what I could to help interact in their life. And listen, if you're a victim of domestic violence, it's simple. Kick them out. Give them the big boot, okay? It's going to be hard. I mean, it's simple, but at the same time, it's very difficult. But once you can give them the big boot, and if you can actually, like, take charge and, like, make sure that you're the one in control, then you will feel a lot better. And I think that's most of what the problem is with why people have trouble saying no. They feel like they don't have control. And when they don't have control, they're under somebody else's thumb. And that's definitely one of the biggest problems with domestic violence, when you feel like you have to obey.
Well, this whole week when we've been asking people how to define domestic violence, one of the biggest things that have been coming forth is you can define domestic violence by knowing your abuser's red flags. So red flags is a big one, yellow flags even. But power and control has come up repeatedly.
It is about a matter of power and control. It's just an idea created by humans. It's an illusion.
Domestic
You know,
violence is an illusion.
Well, no. The idea of control is illusion, all right? You're always the one in control. The second you give the control to somebody else, mentally, most of the times it is mentally and emotionally, it's never physically. The only times it's physically is if, like, beating you, and then you would have to, like, take legal steps into getting rid of that. But that's down the road of, like, we hope that never happens. As far as mental and emotional, you are the ones in control. You just have to remember that. Most of the times people just forget.
So from your side, when you're coming through and you're seeing any kind of domestic violence, like, what does it feel like to you, knowing that you haven't been through it?
Oh, it pisses me off. Like, every time I see it happen, I'm allowed to say that. I know I am. No, it gets me really heated. Every time I see it happen, there's only one time where I saw physical domestic violence, and thank God I wasn't arrested, but it ended up getting very ugly between me and the fella. So, like, it's very... Every time I've seen it happen, it would just get me mad because I'd be telling the person who's the victim, like, you can find a way to get through this. Like, it's going to be hard, but you have to do something. And that's what gets me mad. Whenever they don't do anything, they pretty much just roll over and give up. And that's just going to make your entire life miserable and pointless, and you've just lived your life in misery.
The biggest thing that I'm noticing from before you're a victim, you have your own power and control, and then you hand it off to the abuser, and the abuser has the power and control, and then there's a shift. Like, you feel your control coming back, and that's, like, monumental for the victim.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely a big step, and just hopefully that when the abuser sees that, they get scared, and then that's when they go through desperate moments and desperate measures to try to maintain control.
Those moments are scary because they're, like, very unpredictable.
Those are the ones that could be easily, like, a physical thing, or, like, just something else, like, making them lose their job, or something, destroying their relationship with somebody else through blackmail. It's I don't know why, but there seems to be, like, always lying involved.
Yeah, definitely.
And second there's lying involved, the abuser easily tries to manipulate their way into, oh, hi, hello. Does he want to talk on the air?
Oh.
She's whispering too. Nobody's giving her crap about whispering.
We have Robin and Kai, baby Kai, in the studio.
Kai, and say hello.
Kai.
Say hello. Boop. Boop, 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 boop. We're shy.
He's smiling.
Oh, he's grabbing at my face. Before he was grabbing at your face.
I know, he likes to grab at faces. He's grabbing at the
This is Kai.
That's Kai saying hello. Say hello.
He's got to pay for that if he breaks it.
How are we going to bill a 1-year-old?
His dad.
He's got a lot of lawns to mow and a lot of shoveling to do.
Yes, during extreme moments, you need to make sure that the kids are not around.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Oh, yeah. That was nice. That was very lovely. I wish I was a baby on a radio. No, I'm actually an adult on the radio, still crapping my pants.
I'm thinking of was Baby's Day Out. You ever seen that movie?
No.
Oh my gosh, Baby's Day Out. It's this little blonde boy, and it looks a lot like Kai. This little blonde boy, and, like, there's, like, these 3 guys, and they try to kidnap the baby, but the baby, like, outsmarts them and keeps getting away.
Sounds like Baby Genius.
No, I mean, like those babies, they talked and everything, and they could, like, figure stuff out. But this baby, it just, like, followed everything. Like, it had this lovely book, and it just loved this book, and it followed the whole book. Like, it went to the zoo, and it played with, like, the gorilla. It was a big gorilla, and the gorilla just laid with it.
Would you? All right, here's a good question. I know it's Domestic Violence Week, or, Week of Warriors, but if you could have a pet great white shark or gorilla, which would you choose?
A gorilla.
A gorilla?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Well, I can touch the gorilla.
Yeah, but I could swim with the shark.
Oh, yeah, live through that one.
It will just float on the top, and I'll just, like, ride it all the way to Europe or whatever.
So this is definitely a fantasy question.
This is definitely a fantasy question. I mean, both are ridiculous. Think about it. You're having a pet gorilla.
No, I would... No.
Gorillas cannot be tamed.
And a shark can.
I'm not saying they can. That's why they're both fantasy questions.
No, I would definitely do gorilla.
I feel like I would have to go with the great white shark.
But like the gorilla from like Mighty Joe Young.
Oh, man, that gorilla was huge. That's like King Kong mode. Okay,
Yes.
I see what you did there. Well, if that's the case, then I get Megalodon as a shark.
What?
Yeah, I just went there. You're going with giant ape. I'm going with giant shark.
That's like the biggest shark.
Exactly. Nobody will mess with me.
Except for the shark, and you're dead.
Not really. It's tamed. It's my pet shark.
Oh, because...
This is a fantasy question.
No, I'm from the actually like Mighty Joe Young. That one, like I could survive with. You can't tame something that was never tamed in the movie.
A movie?
Yeah,
Something tamed in a movie? You know, a movie which is majority fictional in Hollywood?
I don't care. I'm going straight from the movie. I'm
just going straight from my mind, okay?
No.
So I can make it happen.
Oh, yeah.
I'll just write a movie about taming a great white shark or taming a megalodon shark and traveling through time and stuff. What are you going to do now? Look at that. I just proved you wrong on your own thing.
It's not. I'm not wrong. Okay? I'm never wrong.
I'm never wrong. Look at you, big shot. Big man on campus over here. Nobody wants to mess with this person over here. All right, so I'm good. So that's my domestic violence view and pet view.
And also, because we talked about it with Emily, and this has been something I've had a couple different people ask me if we plan on doing this again in October.
Nope. Yeah.
Okay. If anybody would think that that's cool or think of, I'd like to make it way bigger than this one. So we had 37 interviews, and we may even have more over the weekend with Nick, but we had 37 interviews. If you can think of ways that we can make this way bigger and so that more people can hear it and more people are affected, that would be great. You can call in 716-878-5104, or you can email me wbnypublicaffairs@gmail.com.
Do it.
Please.
I dare you to do it.
Okay, so I've got one more interview, I believe, for the day. With me right now, make sure that she's on and good to go, is Soleigh Rose. She is a domestic violence survivor and an advocate. So good evening. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
Not bad. Hanging in there. We're almost done.
Thank God it's Friday.
Yeah, really. No kidding. So why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Okay, sure. And I just want to say thanks to Jessica for having me. I'm thrilled to be a part of this project, Week of the Warrior. I think it's great to get the message out, and speak to as many people as possible. So thank you. It's a privilege to be here. Yes, let's see. In 2009, I became a victim of domestic violence, and I went through experiences over the years, but the bottom line is I took what happened to me, the pain, and turned it into something useful to make myself stronger and smarter, and not only that, to be able to help others who were in similar experiences. So I tried to just kind of put it all in perspective and look at the positives that came out of it.
And having that kind of solidarity, I would imagine, would assist not only the people you're trying to help, but yourself, kind of bringing everybody together and facing the same sort of demons.
Oh, yes, most definitely. I mean, healing is an ongoing process. It's not something that really has like an end date on it. It's something that, I struggle with, on, a daily, a weekly basis. But I think the important part is to not be hard on yourself and to, celebrate your little successes and, focus on the good, not the bad. And not only that, but, what you're doing with it now and where you're at and kind of, looking back, but also looking ahead to the future.
Absolutely. So I'd like to hear a little more details from you. What are some of the ways that you advocate for survivors and speak out about domestic violence?
Okay, sure. I do a lot of events in the community, art and music events, some spoken word. I like to give people a variety of, mediums to hear and to share their stories. I think it's a lot less intimidating if you invite someone to, a coffee shop or, something, and, hear a bunch of different artists share their stories in different ways. I think is a lot less, nerve-wracking rather than having someone go to a lecture or discussion, which may be a little uncomfortable for people. So I think kind of finding, like a common ground, a place where people can socialize and, share their stories. I think it's a good place to meet people and network, and for people to know that they're not alone and that there's others out there like them.
I'd imagine it's probably fairly cathartic.
Definitely. I mean, it is very intense at times. One of the things that I do is I'm a performing artist, so I do improv dance sometimes at my events, and that for me is very personal because the movement involved. It's very intense is the only way I can really describe it. And sometimes, like, for a week after my performances, I'm still kind of processing everything because things always come up, regardless. But I think you just have to know, what triggers you, and then just to have a really good support system is a really big part of that. You have to have people that you can talk to, and if you're going somewhere and you feel unsafe, or you have to kind of like respect yourself, and the people around you hopefully will like understand where you're coming from and try to make you feel comfortable.
For those who may not be familiar with the concept, what is triggering? Triggering
is, it could be something that's very sensory. You might, even just something as simple as being somewhere and smelling, like a fragrance that might bring you back to a time or a place, and that can be like very powerful. I think our senses, have a lot of effect on us, and our memories are stored in like different, like sight, smell, taste. So it could be anything. It could be something very specific to your experience, or it could be just something that sets you off and, takes you into a place that you don't want to be in.
So it could be a certain sweater or
sure,
a smell.
Yeah, it could be
like
anything.
Anything.
Yep.
Okay.
But I think the important thing is just to like acknowledge it and realize that you're safe, and and if you are not feeling safe, to be able to know that there's a way out. You can go somewhere, or change your scenery.
Mm-hmm. Now, as a follow-up topic to the original question, you said art and music events. Now, I'm big in radio. I like getting involved in music events. What kind of art and music events do you do?
I've done events at different galleries in the community. The ZGM Gallery, Spot Coffee. I performed at the Infringement Festival a couple of years ago. So, I really like not only the large events, because I've done a lot of larger events. Suzanne Perry has her exposure concert every year for domestic violence. I went to, I think, the second one. I think she's on her 5th year now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's great. With a lot of it, you can meet a lot of people, and at the same time, I like the intimacy of the smaller events. Sometimes, you might get a little disappointed if a lot of people don't show up, but I think the important thing is to realize that it doesn't matter how many people are there. It's what's being said, and the fact that if someone hears you or not. That's what it's all about. And I've had just as successful small shows, that were a lot more significant to me personally. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Just as a quick aside, have you ever gone to City of Night and displayed there?
No, you know what? It's funny because it's been on my list of things to do every year, and I actually plan to attend this year, but that's a great idea. I should look into that if it's not too late.
I'm not originally from Buffalo. Mm-hmm. I came up here from Brooklyn, and I went to City of Night for the first time last year, and it was just phenomenal. And I was thinking,
that's what
going
I heard.
Through today, what a great opportunity to showcase some of that advocacy, either for domestic violence or for any issue, really. So
definitely.
That'd be kind of neat. Now let's shift a bit to our event here tonight. How did you hear about Week of the Warriors?
I actually heard about this project through Suzanne Perry, someone that I've worked with over the years. I'm another advocate in the community, and that is how I met Jessica. It's like the coordinator of the project. So I'm very, and it's nice too because it is a small town and a lot of people know each other, and I just want to do what I can to help the cause, and I really feel that by speaking up, you're doing your part and encouraging others to do the same, rather than, just sitting back and, thinking things are going to happen on their own. Well, that's not true. You have to put an effort and get the word out.
All right. Now, I've asked this question of the other interviewees that I've had throughout the day, and I'm sure there's going to be some overlap, but can you name any resources for people who either want more information or for people who might be experiencing domestic violence and are looking to get some help?
Oh, sure, definitely. There's so many great agencies in our community. One of my favorites is the Family Justice Center. It's kind of like a one-stop shop for everything. They will accompany you through the whole I don't know what you want to call it, but the whole process. It can be very hard and very scary to actually get up the courage to press charges and something. So having someone there that will walk you through it. I mean, they have advocates, they have childcare, they even have police officers on site. So it's a little less intimidating than walking into a regular police station. It's very home-like. So that's one place. Haven House is, a local domestic violence center with wonderful programs. They have support groups. So those are two things that, come to mind off the top of my head. I know there's more.
Is there anything that you would say to, they're kind of two separate questions, but they're sort of entwined.
Okay.
To people who want to help maybe somebody they know in that situation, and then the second part to people who will be in the situation given your experience.
Okay. So just correct me if I'm wrong. So you're asking if someone is feeling like that maybe one of their friends is in a abusive relationship and what can they do to help? Is that correct? Yes, I think it's very important to get the message out there that that you are willing to listen, you're willing to be helpful and supportive, you're not going to pass judgment, you're there, you'll accompany them if needed to, for example, go to file a petition or something to, get an order of protection. I think it can be really scary when you feel like you're the only one. So just having an open line of communication and being there for the person. And the second question, what was the second question?
Sort of the same thing, but if somebody thinks or suspects that they themselves might be in this situation, what would you say to them?
Right. I would say just pick up the phone. I mean, you can call crisis services. It's a 24-hour kind of network for any particular problems you might be having. You can call them, tell them, what your issues are, what you need help with, and then they can refer you out, to shelters or other places. So I think just picking up the phone and, taking the first step is a big part of it. And that's why actually I'm so grateful for Buffalo State, because I was actually trying to get back to school a couple years back. And when my abuser found out, he did everything he could to stop that process. And I was so grateful that I linked up with a counseling center and Buffalo State Health Promotions, because they were able to, help me do what I needed to do to, go and not look back. So, there are really great programs on campus for students and they should definitely take advantage of them.
I can personally attest to how fantastic the counseling center is and the Weigel Health Center in general. I go there for many a sprained foot, as well as some issues I currently am working through.
Okay.
So.
I just wanted to mention I'm actually going to be speaking at Take Back the Night on April 15th at Rockwell Hall this year. Okay. So, I encourage you to, invite your friends and family. They put on an amazing show. Paula Madrigal, the coordinator of Buffalo State Health Promotions. I've worked with her for several years, on different events like Domestic Violence Awareness Month, Take Back the Night, and a few other projects. And she just does an amazing job. And the students really, put their heart and soul into the project. So it's really an amazing piece of work. And I really think you should make it a point to come out.
For those of us who may not be familiar with Take Back the Night, could you explain briefly what that is?
Sure. That is something that happens every April. It happens all around the country. People have their own different events, and, there's all sorts of different ways you can do it, but the main purpose of it is to honor victims of sexual assault specifically, because April is Sexual Assault Month. Yes.
Okay. If you met no obstacles, which I know is a pie in the sky sort of thing, but if you met no obstacles, where would you see yourself in about 5 years?
Ooh. Oh, that's exciting. Actually, some exciting things are happening for me right now. I just got the domain today for a nonprofit that I'm starting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited. It's going to be localartistsagainstviolence.org. And you can also follow me on Instagram. It's under Soleigh Rose, Local Artists Against Violence. So anyways, just definitely that's the place if you want to keep track of what I'm up to or what's going on. And basically what we're doing is going out in the community and networking with other artists and musicians and using, our creativity to express ourselves and get the message out and to make an impact in the community. We're going to be putting up ads, having a billboard. So it's really going to keep us quite busy, and I'm really excited about it. It's going to be great.
Great. And that was, you said localartistagainstviolence.org?
Yes.
Okay. Would you mind if I posted that website up on our Facebook account?
Actually, yes. But for now, if you go to follow me on Instagram, I just got the domain, so it will be up and running, I would say, by the next week. But yeah, that would be wonderful if you could. Thank you.
Not a problem. Finally, just to sort of wrap everything together here, do you have any final words you'd like to share with the audience, or anything that I might have missed?
I think the most important thing that I could offer, to anyone out there who is feeling, trapped, or, feeling that they're not being treated fairly, I think it's just really important that you somehow find the courage to stand up for yourself, and, because everyone deserves to live a life, and, be loved and treated appropriately. And I think, you just need to take steps to get your life back, and that's probably like the best thing you could ever do for yourself. It's not going to be easy, but the journey is all part of the process, and if you look ahead to what your future could look like versus what it is now, you just have to hold on to that hope.
Absolutely. Those are very, very wise words indeed.
Thank you.
Okay. That was Soleigh Rose, a domestic violence survivor and advocate. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
You're quite
Thanks,
welcome.
Jessica.
And we'll have that information up on 91.3 FM WBNY's Facebook page in just a moment. For now, though, let's get back to the music. Here's, you guessed it, it was coming, V&V Nation with Solitary right here on 91.3 FM WBNY.